Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Everyone. Domineering Druid, the Queen asks me to calm down. Chapter 81. The dragon race is the undisputed dominant race in the New World. At the same level, the dragon race is much stronger than other races. As the original skill of the dragon race, the damage of dragon breath has never been ignored. It is one of the killer moves of the dragon race. Bard's heart was almost hanging in his throat at this moment. But just when several people rushed towards Chen Yu, they suddenly saw Chen Yu turning in midair. The Emperor Ape Beetle disappeared, and Chen Yu turned into the form of a world tree. The huge body of the world tree took root directly in the ground and supported itself steadily. Then the world tree split an arm from the tree body, swung it and smashed it towards Bard. It is impolite not to return the favor. An ancient saying of the Sha country is for you. Boom. The violent power and rapid speed made this punch sound like thunder and lightning. Not only did Chen Yu not die, but he also had the strength to counterattack Bard. Shu He and Li Wei were shocked when they saw this scene. That was the top leader of the Tianxing organization, Bard, a third-turn strongman. Plus a red dragon of the same third turn. The combined power of the two was no match for most third-turn strongmen. If it was Shu He or Li Wei, they would not dare to complain to Bard's face when they encountered Bard's attack. But Chen Yu actually attacked directly. Not only Shu He and Li Wei were shocked, but Bard himself was also stunned. He clearly sensed the power contained in Chen Yu's punch. That was definitely not the damage that a professional who had not yet sublimated could inflict. Reaching out to hold down the red dragon that wanted to open its mouth, Bard stood up. This Lord of the Bull Star was ready to take Chen Yu's punch to make up for his mistake just now. Bang! The world tree's fist was extremely huge, and it was generally on Bard. The violent power even contained the power of thunder, which shocked Bard's body. With the physique of a dragon knight, Bard felt his blood boiling. He gritted his teeth and smiled at Chen Yu, giving him a thumbs up. Nice power, calm down young man. It's really my fault this time, I will make it up to you later. Woohoo! Hearing Bard's words, the red dragon made a dissatisfied sound. Chen Yu retracted his fist and reappeared from the trunk of the world tree. His face was pale, and his vitality had not yet fully recovered. I hope Lord Bard will do what he said. Quote. Chen Yu insisted on attacking Bard for two reasons. First, of course, he wanted to vent his anger for the injury he had just suffered. Second, he also saw that Bard had a good character, so he wanted to fight with the top strongman. Now he was quite satisfied with the result. Although he was not in the strongest form of Emperor Ape Beetle, he could roughly estimate the gap between himself and Bard. Shu He told him that Bard was a third-level sublimation. If he exploded the Emperor Ape Beetle again, maybe Bard would not dare to take it head-on. He was temporarily powerless against a third-level strongman. But if it was a second level, he would definitely have the strength to fight. At this time, a strong wind blew from a distance, and it was the old principal who discovered the movement here. Before, the black fog was everywhere, and the old principal could not find Chen Yu and others at all. The old principal who rushed to the front did not look very good. He saw the scene of Chen Yu punching Bard clearly, and his heart almost jumped out. This kid is really bold. Aren't you afraid that others will backhand you to death? Chen Yu did not release the world tree form, but instead connected Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal to the torso. As for Bard, he stood on the red dragon, just at eye level with Chen Yu. After sensing Chen Yu's changing world tree aura at close range, he suddenly had an idea. Bard took out a gorgeous disc from his space equipment. The disc itself was golden, with extremely mysterious patterns carved on it, and it was carefully condensed into the shape of the sun. When he saw this disc, Chen Yu felt a little close. What is this? This is the sun disc of the elves. Bard held the sun disc and jumped onto Chen Yu's torso. In the Black Wilderness, the various tribes of the Holy Alliance worked together to resist the Abyss Army. The elves were naturally one of them, and part of the technology of the Black Tower came from the elves. The sun disk was specially used for sacrifice by the elves and could activate the elf space. Outsiders could not use this prop. But after Bard saw the world tree, he wanted Chen Yu to try it in the form of the world tree. If Chen Yu could activate the sun disk, then he could contact the elves remotely. With the help of the elves, maybe the arrangement buried in the wilderness can be activated. At least, the power of the Black Tower can be overlimited for a short period of time. Now they must buy time to find the Abyss Channel and destroy or seal it. As for the repair work after the Black Tower exceeds the limit, as long as the Black Wilderness defense line is still there, it can be repaired slowly. If the Black Wilderness can't hold on and the Abyss invades again, it doesn't matter whether the Black Tower is there or not. Abyss again. Chen Yu sighed. He suddenly felt that he could encounter the Abyss everywhere. A good trial at the beginning was also made more difficult because of the invasion of the Abyss. Now Shu He's simple test has also become extremely difficult. Both incidents, if not handled properly, will lead to chaos in the world. In novels, the protagonist is usually called a walking human disaster, and wherever he goes, he explodes. Quote. Suddenly, a faint voice came from behind. Chen Yu turned back speechlessly and found that it was Li Hui's muttering. The old principal slapped Li Hui's head in annoyance. Is this the right time to talk about this? Chen Yu took Bard's sun disk without hesitation. He did have a lot of connections with the Elf Royal Court. When he was in the newcomer trial, he accepted the test invitation of the Elf Queen. It was with the Queen's test reward that he activated the beast spirit of the Emperor Ape Beetle. In another 2 months, the 10 veins of the Wind Elf will even contact him. Looking at the sun disk in his hand, Bard didn't know how to activate it, so Chen Yu simply threw an identification spell on it. Elf Sun Disk. A prop used by the elves for sacrifice, which can draw the power of the sun and communicate with the royal court. Draw the power of the sun. Chen Yu looked up at the sky and found that the sky was gray and the sun was looming. He tried to infuse his own energy into the sun disk. The next moment, the Wind Elf crown, natural belt, and spirit tree wristband on his body all lit up. Under the effect of these 3 pieces of equipment, the sun disk also emitted a soft light. The entire sun disk left Chen Yu's palm and slowly rose above everyone's head. Bard was overjoyed when he saw this. He didn't expect Dong Yu to really activate the sun disk. If the elves intervened, the revival of the Abyss might be solved quickly. After all, the channel was not opened for a long time, and the Tianxing organization rushed here as soon as possible. Such a thing is definitely a major event in the rules of the organization. Chen Yu is Shu He's companion, and Shu He can use this opportunity to be promoted to a formal member and have a star. Elf Royal Court, White Palace. The beautiful queen who was sitting on the throne with her eyes closed suddenly opened her eyes. She stood up in confusion and stretched out her hand to point at the void in front of her. A portal appeared in front of her. After walking in, she came to a garden full of flowers. In the center of the garden, there was an unknown jade carved into an elf, neither male nor female. The elf clasped his hands together and prayed. At this moment, a little bit of light emerged from the statue, and a small illusory sun appeared above it. Sacrificial sun plate. Are they the wandering elves? The garden where the elf queen is the place where the elves perform sacrifices. That statue represents all the elves. When the elf royal court was at its peak, the elves were spread all over the world. Sometimes, the elves who were away from home could not return in time to participate in the sacrificial ceremony, so they would perform sacrifices remotely. Through the sacrificial sun plate, the spiritual will of the elves can be brought here. Join the big family and perform sacrificial activities together. But now is not the time for the big sacrifice. Why is the sun plate activated? The queen stretched out her hand again, and the illusory sun shadow that appeared on the statue slowly spread. The next moment, surprise appeared on the queen's delicate face. Because the person who appeared in front of her was Chen Yu, whom she had just met not long ago. This elf sister, who are you? Sister, ha. When the elf queen heard Chen Yu's address, a faint arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. I am the spokesperson of nature, the lord of the White Royal Court, the queen of the elves of the world, Mersha. Chen Yu, where did you get the sun disk from, and why did you activate it? On the other side of the light and shadow, Chen Yu was shocked to hear the queen's self-introduction. The elf in front of him was so beautiful that any words seemed insufficient to describe her. She was actually the queen of the elves. At this time, he was a fusion of his spirit and soul, and appeared in the sacrificial garden. Bard and others in the Black Wilderness could not see the situation here. They could only feel that there was a huge force transmitted through the air and descended on the surroundings. Although it had been weakened over a very long distance, this pressure still made the black group on the wilderness hole disappear without a trace. Bard's red dragon tightened its dragon scales and looked extremely nervous. Bard only thought that Chen Yu had contacted a big shot of the elves. But he didn't know that he actually talked to the queen directly. Chen Yu from Blue Star did not have the restraint and nervousness of the elves or foreigners in this world towards the queen. On the contrary, he did not hide his admiration for the queen. The queen was very generous and let Chen Yu look at her like this. She stretched out her hand and several vines stretched out from the flowers all over the ground, weaving into a chair. You mean, the abyss passage in the black wilderness has been opened and invaded again? Why do you always encounter the abyss wherever you go? The abyss has not officially appeared in front of the world for many years. Chen Yu didn't expect the elf queen to complain, and for a moment he didn't know how to refute. But the queen was obviously just teasing a few words. She put her hand on her chin and pondered for a while. In the black wilderness, each tribe had different backup plans and arrangements. Later, with the decline of some races, most of these arrangements were abandoned. The arrangements of the elves were the same. Although they were still there, they had been away from the world for a long time. How could they go back to repair the backup plans of the black wilderness? Now that Chen Yu came to ask for help, the queen couldn't help but think about how to help Chen Yu. Chen Yu was the person of hope she had set her sights on, and one of the future seeds selected by the royal court. If Chen Yu can defeat the abyss this time, he will undoubtedly have a very impressive achievement. A fledgling who has twice destroyed the abyss's recovery plan. Such a record can earn him the title of hero in any force. Moreover, Chen Yu's request is not for the elves to take any action. He just needs the queen to help him activate the overload function in the Black Tower array. He does not need the elf royal court to send any legions to assist. The royal court's over-limit teleportation array is still under maintenance, and in fact they have no way to deploy legions remotely. The overload of the Black Tower itself may not be enough. If the abyss does not move, it will be a thunderous force if it moves. Back in the ancestral land of the Wind Elves, it was because the abyss invested its main force in breaking the world barrier. But here, they don't need it. In this case, the strength of the abyss vanguard will be beyond your ability to resist. The queen opened her cherry lips and explained the current situation to Chen Yu. Bard thought that by activating the Black Tower, he could suppress the riot in the Black Wilderness. But the queen told Chen Yu clearly that Bard was still thinking too simply. Bard had not experienced a real battle with the abyss, and his judgment of the abyss invasion was biased. She was sure that the abyss vanguard must have arrived in the Black Wilderness. In the case that all the energy was not dispersed, the strength of the vanguard that the abyss could deploy was at least the second level. The queen was not surprised that even powerful monsters of the third level appeared. My advice to you is to turn around and leave. After thinking again and again, the queen didn't know how Chen Yu could profit from this crisis. The previous guess was quite good, allowing Chen Yu to achieve a powerful record of destroying the abyss twice. But the facts are the backbone. Chen Yu's strength alone is not enough. Queen Mercia, how many third-turn monsters do you think can be deployed with the abyss power of the Black Wilderness? At least 3. What about second-turn monsters? That won't be many, probably 1 or 2. The queen patiently explained to Chen Yu. When the total amount of energy is limited, the best choice for the abyss is of course to send powerful monsters. If you can send a third-turn monster, it's better to send a bunch of first-turn and second-turn monsters. Only when there is excess energy after the third-turn monster is sent, the group will consider the next one. According to the queen's understanding of the Black Wilderness, 1 or 2 is the maximum. As soon as she finished speaking, the queen saw Chen Yu's eyes light up. The reaction of this young man was completely beyond her expectations. Wait, you don't want to sacrifice your beast soul? Didn't An Loyue teach you the orthodox druid doctrine there? The queen suddenly remembered what happened when she first met Chen Yu. The young man sacrificed his beast soul in front of all the high-level officials of the imperial court. Even the world tree was not spared. This evil way can bring Chen Yu a strong increase in strength. Combined with Chen Yu's current appearance, she knew what Chen Feng wanted. When the queen mentioned Anluiyu, Chen Yu's mouth twitched. Sure enough, the old man was going to teach me. Chen Yu did not say what was in his heart, he just looked at the queen. Queen Mersha, I want to try. You don't want the tester you chose to flee here in embarrassment, do you? On the beautiful face of the elf queen opposite, two willow eyebrows slightly raised. For many years, no one dared to talk to her like this. But the young man in front of her had such an attitude towards her from the beginning. What was even more strange to the queen was that she did not feel any disgust. She was always willing to be more tolerant and expectant of Chen Yu. Are you sure that your ability to sacrifice will not have any negative impact on yourself or the beast soul? No, Chen Yu said firmly. As for the beast soul's mental injury and the collapse of fighting spirit, that is a psychological problem of the beast soul. It has nothing to do with him. After getting Chen Yu's reply, the queen quickly searched in her mind. After a while, she found a way. You still only have 3 beast souls now, right? In the Black Wilderness, a powerful sacred creature fell that year. I can teach you how to activate the Black Tower and use the power of the Black Tower to find that creature. That creature is the key to your this time. The elf queen stood up and said in high spirits. The sacred creature that fell in the Black Wilderness. After hearing this, Chen Yu's eyes kept shining. His talent, soul sacrifice, can strengthen himself by sacrificing his own beast soul. After his beast soul skill reaches the maximum level, there are still 2 vacancies in the 5 beast soul slots. He originally planned to find a way to fill these 2 vacancies in the elf royal court. With a great druid like Enloyue, Chen Shui believes that the royal court will definitely find a way to find scarce beast souls. The earth giant bear is an earth beast with infinite power. The emperor ape beetle is a mutant insect, and now it is his main beast soul. The world tree has special functions, tending to assist and play a battlefield role. For the next 2 beast souls, he tends to supplement the flying ability and water ability. In this way, he can complete his combat adaptability. With complete sea, land and air, there is no shortcoming. Queen Mersha, what species is that creature? Phoenix. As soon as the voice fell, Mersha saw Chen Yu's smile become extremely bright. However, Chen Yu's reaction was within her expectations and not surprising. For druids, powerful beast souls are always hard to come by. All the sacred creatures come from Gensokyo. And Gensokyo was shattered and collapsed in the Abyss War that year. The major sacred races in Gensokyo were either completely wiped out or moved to other places. For example, the dragon race has now moved to the Dragon Cave. The Phoenix race disappeared in history, and only its branches are still active today. When the Phoenix fell in the Black Wilderness, all tribes joined forces to seal the body. Given the ability of the Phoenix clan to achieve nirvana, all tribes hope that the other side can be resurrected. But after so many years, there is still no change in the Black Wilderness. I think it's not going to work. The elf queen Mersha did not experience the war that year. She inherited the throne 100 years ago. But as a queen, she can have the historical memory of the elves of all generations through the ritual of the world tree. So she is not unfamiliar with what happened in the Black Wilderness that year. However, in order to find the body of the Phoenix, Chen Yu still needs to do one thing. The 4 tribes that joined forces back then were the elves, dragons, titans, and holy spirits. It was agreed that the person who opened and entered the seal must be from one of the 4 tribes. This is to prevent the body of the Phoenix from being used. Quote. The elf queen said slowly. Chen Yu understood that this was the queen's condition. If you want to obtain the Phoenix's corpse and try to extract the beast soul from it, it depends on how Chen Yu expresses his attitude. Your Majesty, I am willing to join the imperial court as a druid. I am willing to be your shield, your spear, your loyal companion, and escort you. If the imperial court accepts me, you will also gain my friendship and the friendship of the ancient Eastern Empire in another world. Chen Yu did not hesitate, and immediately put his hand on his chest and said to the queen. According to the ancient teachings of the imperial court, druids automatically have the identity of elves. But Chen Yu also kept a secret, he was just escorting the queen. If you want him to contribute his life to the elf imperial court, then you have to talk about it separately. At the same time, he did not forget to pull Xiaoguo out. Sure enough, after hearing his answer, the queen smiled with satisfaction. This smile is like the warm sunshine in winter, making everyone who sees it intoxicated. The queen had originally planned to recruit Chen Yu as a member of the elf royal court. In order to solve the problem of the declining royal court, each branch of the elf had a corresponding plan. Each branch would select the so-called person of hope. And the one Mersha chose was Chen Yu. The moment she saw Chen Yu in the ancestral land of the Wind Elves, this idea took root in her heart. Including the subsequent tests and invitations, she did not hide anything. But if Chen Yu just joined like this, Chen Yu would not stand out among the many people of hope. Even if he has the ability to transform into a world tree. So when Chen Yu refused to go to the royal court, the queen was not too disappointed. Because the time was not ripe at that time. But it is different now. The phoenix has disappeared from this world for a long time. If Chen Yu can obtain the power of the phoenix, he will also shoulder the hope of the phoenix clan. The elves also come from Gensokyo, and they were allies with the phoenix lineage back then. Transformed into the world tree. Hold the power of the phoenix. Druid, the son of nature. Twice blocked and destroyed the plan of the abyss invasion. With all these things added to one person, Chen Yu will undoubtedly be the first person. In the hands of the elf queen, colorful brilliance condensed and turned into a gorgeous scepter. She lightly tapped the scepter on the ground, and immediately there was a wave of magic. Chen Yu, who was in the spiritual and soul space, felt a force acting on himself. In this case, Chen Yu, Mersha, as the queen of the elf, will grant you the identity of an elf. From now on, I hope you will contribute your strength to the imperial court. With the queen's declaration, the energy moving on Chen Shui fluctuated. You have been recognized by the elf queen. You have gained a new identity, elf. You have joined a new faction, the elf royal court. You have become the person of hope chosen by the queen. Skill list unlocks elf magic. Skill list unlocks elf martial arts. The spirit tree wristband detects your identity and has automatically unsealed. The energy finally formed a gorgeous divine pattern on the back of Chen Yu's hand. After flashing a few times, it disappeared into the body. Chen Yu immediately checked the emerging information and found that there were indeed changes. He now has two racial identities at the same time, human and elf. There are also two new branches on the skill list, both of which are about the new abilities of the elves. In addition, after the original titles of Historical Observer and Dragon Slayer, there is another Elf Hope. Elf Hope, selected as a candidate for the Elf Hope, automatically improves favorability towards elves and half-elves. And the sealed array pattern on the spirit tree wristband he wore on his hand unfolded again. Spirit tree wristband. Evaluation. Legend. From the Elf Royal Court, the wristband crafted by the Elf Minister using the Spirit Power Tree. Original exclusive equipment of the King of Wind Elves, unsealed again due to the blessing of the Elf Queen. World Tree Array. Guide the resonance of the World Tree to strengthen your own designated skills or attributes. Agility plus 40%, Spirit plus 40%, Will plus 40%. The unsealed Spirit Tree wristband finally revealed its true appearance, and the information of the equipment was completely opened. This is actually the original exclusive equipment of the King of Wind Elves. No wonder the Elf Amaya was so respectful when she saw the wristband. The so-called Spirit Tree is actually the World Tree of the Elf Royal Court. The equipment itself is made of a branch of the World Tree, and naturally comes with the power of the World Tree. The attributes attached to the equipment are also doubled, from 20% to 40%. The overall evaluation has been upgraded from A level to S level and reached Legend. In this way, Chen Yu has 3 legendary equipment. No one in the entire Xia Kingdom could have a more gorgeous configuration than him. After doing all this, the queen returned to her vine chair. I have given you the queen's mark. With this mark, you can sense the seal in the black wilderness. Go, my dear, hurry up. Whether you can solve this crisis depends on your harvest. Thank you, queen. Without greeting the queen again, Chen Yu returned decisively. When the figure disappeared, the queen's power also went to the black wilderness. All the black towers throughout the black wilderness, except for those with insufficient energy crystals, suddenly burst into light. The black wilderness, which was about to be shrouded by black fog, was torn into cracks by the strong light. The changes in the black wilderness were also noticed by all countries at the first time. The countries that were originally only on guard and monitoring the wilderness were shocked. In the northeast, the dwarf kingdom took the lead, and a legion emerged from the bunker and began to enter the wilderness. In the southeast and southwest, the human kingdom also began to organize legions and prepare to enter the wilderness. Stormwind City is located at the junction of the southwest and northwest. Further north, the original responsible forces have disappeared. So this area is now under the responsibility of the Star Organization. After seeing the changes in the Black Tower, Bard knew that Chen Yu succeeded. The elves activated the preset backup of the Black Tower, buying them time. After the Black Tower was activated, the terrifying abyss began to be exposed in this world. The monsters that had long been corrupted by the abyss no longer hid themselves and kept drilling out from the ground. Even the deep passage that Nagral could not find was torn off the shield and appeared in front of the world. A flash of lightning roared. Grawl was wrapped in lightning and brought Bex and Lanya to Bard and others. Chen Yu, who had transformed into a world tree, was very conspicuous in the wilderness, which made it easier for him to find him. Bex and Lanya were shocked by the huge tree in front of them. They thought Chen Yu was just an ordinary druid, but they didn't expect that he could turn into such a huge tree. In other words, they didn't recognize that it was a world tree in front of them, otherwise their shock would probably be doubled. Okay, the newcomers are here. You guys should join forces to escape the wilderness. Bard and I will light up the remaining lighthouses. Glar had already seen the lighthouses activated, but he thought it was Bard's work. Just as he finished speaking, he suddenly heard a roar in the distance. A huge earth dragon tore the earth apart and stepped onto the earth with molten lava and black flames. The terrible momentum instantly swept across the wilderness, causing many wilderness monsters to tremble. Only those monsters that also came from the abyss cheered at this time. The momentum of the sublimation level of the third turn, the Pioneer King level monster of the abyss is here. Bard immediately analyzed the level of the earth dragon. When Bex and Lanya heard it, their faces turned green. Who would have thought that an ordinary test for newcomers would involve enemies of this level? But the shock was not over yet. In the other two directions, powerful momentum also broke out at the same time. There are two more monster bosses of the same level. Chen Yu's expression was calm. Because of the queen, he had known that there would be 2 or 3 third-level monsters appearing this time. Now it was just a verification of the queen's judgment. Greyer turned into lightning and rose to the sky. Looking far away, he immediately saw the abyss passage emerging. However, near the deep passage, a monster with hundreds of tentacles was guarding there. That was one of the 3 third-level bosses. This boss stabbed its tentacles into the deep passage, constantly accelerating the opening of the passage. The other 2 bosses, however, set their sights on Greyer. It will take some time for the support of various forces to arrive in the wilderness. Bard's expression became extremely serious. At this time, Chen Yu suddenly said, "We are still responsible for replacing the source crystal of the lighthouse. You go and stop the 2 bosses and try not to let them affect us." Hearing Chen Yu's words, Bex and Lanya both showed an expression of, "Are you crazy?" At the moment, this environment is obviously not suitable for people of their level to participate. And Chen Yu actually wants to take on the task of the lighthouse. If a few more second-level or first-level monsters rush out of the black fog, all of them will die. Even if the Tianxing organization is based on the concept of maintaining order. But Bex and Lanya are still very resistant to this kind of mission that will definitely lead to death. Mainly, they feel that their death here is meaningless. Bud also has the same idea. An organization's hope lies in young people. In his opinion, whether it is Chen Yu or Shu He, they are not strong enough to intervene in this incident. "No, you should retreat. I just met the Elf Queen and received her order. I have to activate a deployment." Chen Yu flatly rejected Bard's order. He looked at Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal, and put them together with Bex with the big hand transformed by the world tree. "Give me the things, I will replace the Black Tower source crystal." "Principal, take them away first." The old principal looked at Chen Yu with complicated eyes. At this moment, he hated his body very much. At such a critical moment, he couldn't help Chen Yu at all. It was even worse than in the trial. The one in front of him was the hope of Sha country's future. Even if he risked his life to protect the person. But the sad thing is that even if he risked his life, he couldn't play a role in this environment. As Chen Yu said, protecting Shuhi and others from leaving was the best thing he could do. After a moment of silence, the principal's face regained firmness. You've always had a good idea. I will protect them and let them leave, but I hope you can also protect yourself. Principal, you forgot that we can be resurrected. Li Wei suddenly said something that completely destroyed the atmosphere that was originally rendered somewhat tragic. The old principal couldn't help but twitch his mouth, grabbed Li Hui's neck, and led people to jump down the world tree. Shuhi looked back at Chen Yu, said take care, and then left. Bard, who stayed here, only remembered at this time that Shuhi and his friends were from another world. The aliens have the very unreasonable ability to resurrect. He was too anxious just now and didn't even think of it. Without saying anything, he also threw the chestbacks and lanyard to the old principal. Bard rode on his red dragon and saluted Chen Yu solemnly. In that case, the lighthouse is in your hands. If this is successful, Tianxing will not forget your contribution. The red dragon opened its mouth and growled at Chen Yu. Boy, even if you can be resurrected, don't be too careless. When the matter is done, I will apologize to you. The third-level red dragon has long learned to speak human language. After hearing this, Chen Yu smiled and his body sank into the trunk of the world tree. The next moment, the earth rumbled and shook. Countless tree roots rushed out from all directions and continued to spread out into the distance. World domain, tree blessing, tree hatred, natural spirit. All the skills of the world tree are activated. Chen Yu turned into a war machine, showing his terrifying destructive power. The old principal, Shu He, Li Wei and others who had just left, even Bard and Grail in the sky. All were killed by Chen Yu was startled by the explosion. But it's not over yet. The crown of the Wind Elves comes with a legendary blessing, it can summon loyal wind element guards. The blue wind element forms a gust of wind, surrounding the world tree. The next moment, strong wind element guards appeared in front of Chen Yu, up to 1,000 in number. Go, find all the black towers with weak source crystals. Guard the black towers. Yes, my king. The wind elves have no face or mouth, but a sound like a whistle of wind can be heard. 1,000 wind elf guards are divided into 10 teams and shoot towards the wilderness. Bard, who saw this scene, showed a wanton smile on his face. Grawl in the sky laughed even louder, like thunder. What a druid. Bard, we can't lose face in front of the younger generation. You don't need to tell me, the earth dragon is left to you, and the other wandering king monster is given to me. The black wilderness rioted. All the neighboring countries and forces dispatched their own legions. But it was a step too late after all, and the wilderness land in the bordering area had already collapsed. In this case, the speed of the legion's advance was greatly affected. If only the strong entered, they would be afraid of being ambushed. So after the Elf Queen activated the Black Tower formation and dispersed the blockade mist. The only organization that could stop the power of the Abyss in the first time was still the Tianxing organization. The Ground Dragon is the name of a monster with the power of dragon veins, not an orthodox dragon clan. And the one that rushed out of the abyss was a power player at first glance. When it stood on the ground, it was like a high-rise building, full of oppression. Bard asked Grail to fight because Titan was also a race representing power. The situation of the last monster that did not appear was unclear. Titan's method was direct and straightforward, so it was safer to deal with the Ground Dragon. And Bard himself let the red dragon go. Dragon language magic condensed at a very fast speed, and all kinds of destructive energy bombarded the wilderness like rain. He didn't care if there were monsters in the black fog, he would bomb wherever he saw. The combat power exerted by the high-level strongman was enough to destroy the world. Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal who were on the run were shocked. In the real world, Red Moon has only been around for more than a year. Every country has a strong man who has sublimated, and they are regarded as a treasure, and countless people follow him. In theory, in more than a year, an ordinary person becomes a strong man. This speed is also quite explosive in the new world. Which of the strong men like Bard has not gone through thousands of trials and years of hard work? From training to self-growth, there are levels along the way. Finally, he gets the true meaning of power and sublimates and strengthens. Bard looks like a middle-aged man, but he is actually over 80 years old. Titan Grail is even more than 300 years old. However, The growth rate is just the growth rate after all. The actual situation now is that there are too many high-level sublimation masters in the new world. Once the two worlds are completely integrated, the real world will not be able to bear it. You can't expect the countries and forces in this world to be indifferent to the extra land and resources. What's more, there are many countries and forces on the Blue Star side who are doing evil unscrupulously in the new world. With the advantage of being able to resurrect, they plunder and commit crimes crazily in the new world. They live a life of enjoying every day. This is the case for countries that are already in chaos, and for those countries that are hypocritical. They even say righteously that they are destroying the power of the new world and fighting for resources for their own development. That is to say, there are big countries like Shah country suppressing it, otherwise the Blue Star side would have started a war long ago. But Shah country itself is also a thorn in the eyes of other countries on Blue Star. They are eager to annex Shah country and share the secret resources on Shah country's vast territory. If any country or force invites the strong to the new world through means they don't know, then it is very likely to cause terrible damage to Shah country. Look at the battle between Grar and Bard and the enemy at this moment. The Black Wilderness has been almost plowed. That is, this wilderness is large enough and is protected by the power of the past, otherwise it would have collapsed long ago. If it were the big cities of Shah country, it would only take 10 minutes to destroy them with such an attack. Shu He looked back. At this distance, Chen Yu's shadow could no longer be seen. There was black fog, thunder and fire everywhere. For no reason, a thought came to her mind. After this incident, Chen Yu will become extremely powerful. Perhaps Chen Yu will pave the way for Xiaoguo's new beginning in the new world. The battle between the strong men is still going on, and it is getting more and more intense. Titan Grar's body has expanded to nearly 10 meters in height, and his muscles are as clear as rock carvings. His terrible strength can even grab the earth dragon and overturn it to the ground. But Chen Yu didn't pay attention to all this. With his super speed advantage, the wind element guards have found all the lighthouses that need to replace the source crystal. He took out 2 crystals from his backpack and stuffed them into his mouth. In order to support his training, Xiaoguo equipped him with a complete resource subsidy. Like this high-level crystal obtained in the novice trial, as many as you want. He opened the skill list and found a skill in the newly developed elf magic. Whisper of the Wind. Wind attribute magic, compressing a large amount of wind elements into invisible, forming extremely strong cutting damage. With armor breaking, cutting, bleeding effects. A very gentle name, but it is an extremely terrifying lethal spell. It is an intermediate sequence in elf magic. He lit it up without hesitation and invested a skill point in it. The reason why Chen Yu chose this spell was that it belonged to the wind attribute. And the power of the spell depends entirely on the spirit and magic power of the caster. If you can compress it more fiercely, you will naturally get stronger destructive power. Legendary Blessing of the Crown of the Wind Elves. The affinity with the wind element is full level, and the power of wind attribute skills is increased by 100%. Legendary Blessing of the Crown of the Wind Elves. The field of wind excludes other elemental attributes and creates a world with only wind. With Chen Yu's world tree as the center, all attribute elements except the wind element are expelled. This range spreads outward from small to large, and soon caught up with the old principle and others. The wind flow that originally surrounded the old principle suddenly became stronger. Even the speed of the galloping was much faster. He knew that Chen Yu was helping, and he didn't say anything, and he directly increased the speed. On Chen Yu's side, his superposition has not yet ended. After superimposing 2 legendary blessings in succession, he also became a thorn in the eyes of the abyss monsters. A huge worm emerged from the ground in the distance and rushed towards him. The worm's body surface had layers of wrinkles, and black liquid kept splashing between its movements. Any object that came into contact with the liquid, whether it was the earth or the monster, would be corroded quickly. Chen Yu cast an identification spell. Abyss Sandworm. Sublimation to the first level, details unknown. Attributes, unknown. Skills, unknown. Chen Yu retracted his gaze and did not take the sandworm seriously. He thought that after the Abyss channel had transmitted 3 third-level monsters, it could at least transmit 1 second-level monster. But now it seems that the energy of the Abyss is not as great as he imagined. In other words, the transmission energy consumed by the third-level monster is very large. Chen Yu no longer took the first-level monster seriously. After learning the Whisper of the Wind, he automatically understood the elven language related to the Whisper of the Wind. He spoke melodiously, and the magic power in his body moved in response. Near the world tree he transformed, a series of nearly transparent wind blades condensed. Legend of the Spirit Tree Wristband, World Tree Array Pattern. Guide the resonance of the world tree to strengthen your own designated skills or attributes. Activate the ability of the Spirit Tree Wristband. Chen Yu felt that someone was looking at him. His world tree beast soul emitted a weak wave, as if it was about to wake up. But the wave was fleeting, and the world tree soul fell into deep sleep again. However, Chen Yu already felt a great power emerging from his body. You have gained the attention of the world tree ancestor. You have gained the energy infusion of the world tree. Please select the skill or attribute to be strengthened. Whisper of the Wind. A. The blessing of the world tree array is a blessing of power, which is different from the natural belt. Chen Yu did not waste it on other places, and all of it was input into the Whisper of the Wind. The wind blades around Chen Yu made a soft hum and became completely transparent. But if someone carefully observed Chen Yu's side, you can see that the surrounding space seems a little distorted. And Chen Yu is not going to stop yet. He emerged from the trunk of the world tree and clenched his hands. The power of thunder surged from him. Heart of Thunder LV1. Your attack can be accompanied by thunder damage, and the damage fluctuation is 1%, 10% of the spiritual attribute. Chen Yu threw 9 more skill points and upgraded the high-level skill of Heart of Thunder to the maximum level. The damage of the 10th level Heart of Thunder is stable at 20% of the spiritual attribute. And his spiritual attribute, with 3 legendary equipment and the world tree form, reached 914,004. That is, his attack will be accompanied by 182,800 thunder damage. Chen Yu, who had already trained in the Ghost Cave, directed the power of thunder to the Whisper of Wind. The effect of the wind field is to expel elemental forces other than wind elements. But Chen Yu's thunder comes from himself. Although the wind blade after being integrated into the Whisper of Wind is also constantly passing away, the wind blade is still strengthened. The wind blade, which had become transparent, now emits a faint electric light. Chen Yu doesn't care whether it will affect concealment. If the spiritual attribute of 900,000 is placed on Blue Star, it is estimated that it will scare the countries. Even in the New World, in the Black Wilderness at this time, it is a powerful number. This is the value of the limit of the first turn of sublimation. Many strong people have not reached 900,000 attributes even if they have sublimated to the second turn. And Chen Yu, before sublimation, is almost at the limit. He looked around, at the abyss monsters swarming in, at the sandworm that was constantly drilling forward. A bright smile appeared on his face. I'll give you a big gift first. Click. The 2 magic crystals were completely absorbed by him, turned into powder and spit out of his mouth. Chen Yu's magic power dropped to the lowest point in an instant. But what followed was the countless wind blades shooting around. At this time, Titan Grar had just overturned the Earth Dragon again, and his fist with lightning hit the dragon head. The Earth Dragon also swept over with its huge tail, making him vomit blood. Farther away, Bard in the sky had locked onto the third monster. The red dragon's breath and his dragon spear were constantly compressing the monster's space. With the help of Chen Yu, the old principal successfully brought everyone out of the Black Wilderness area. Everyone looked back and saw the sky was waving like water. At the same time, all the legions that came to the Black Wilderness also saw the strange phenomenon in the sky. The Whisper of the Wind itself is a secret. The reason why everyone can see the difference is because Chen Yu is accompanied by thunder. The thunder force that is constantly repelled by the wind field causes the distortion of spatial vision. The air is burned and the smell of burning is floating. There is a brief pause of 1 second. The next moment, everyone is shocked to see the sky of the Black Wilderness, and the layers of rolling dark clouds are all torn apart. It seems that an invisible big hand has violently torn this world apart. Outside, the territory that the siege army and the old principal and others could not see. Countless monsters exploded into pieces of blood foam. The sandworm that drilled out of the ground had no time to dodge before it was cut by wind blades one after another. The thunder attached to the whisper of wind could only make the sandworm stiff for a moment. But at this moment, there were so many wind blades all over this territory. The sandworm was completely stiff and could not move. Its thick skin was cut open one after another, and blood mixed with corrosive liquid splashed everywhere. The abyss sandworm was angry, terrified, and puzzled. It didn't understand why this person who didn't even sublimate in perception could burst out such a powerful attack. It wanted to rush over and knock down the tree fiercely, and then swallow it with its bloody mouth. But at this time, the sandworm was several kilometers away from Chen Yu. The distance that could be crossed in a moment in the past has now become a chasm. The sandworm's health bar is as high as more than 3 million, but it is now running out at a terrifying speed. This is incredible, eh? Bard looked at the picture created by Chen Yu in the sky and sighed from the bottom of his heart. Within the area of dozens of kilometers centered on Chen Yu, all the creatures left were the huge sandworm. He was originally worried that Chen Yu would not be a match for the first-level monster. But now it seems that he underestimated Chen Yu. The effect of this burst alone is comparable to that of a legion. After a full-strength attack, Chen Yu turned around and released the World Tree form, turning into an Emperor Ape Beetle. Take out the new magic crystal to absorb magic power. Chen Yuzan went to the lighthouse guarded by the wind element guards. Taking advantage of this time, he quickly repaired all the lighthouses that needed to replace the source crystal. When the last one was lit by him, all the black lighthouses on the black wilderness shook together. The whole formation finally reached a perfect state at this moment. The strong light was connected into one, and it continued to spread out at an extraordinary speed. The black fog in the distance of the black wilderness was also dispelled. Rays of light stretched across the air, connected in series, forming a huge blockade. Any monster that tried to impact the blockade would be bombarded by the light. Seeing this scene, Bard and Grawl couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. The function of the lighthouse formation is to prevent the abyss breath from leaking out and the monsters from rushing out. Now they can spare some time to concentrate on the main BCSS in front of them. This matter is over. I have to thank that kid. Titan showed a hideous smile, and rough lightning appeared on his body. The war started again. Chen, after you finished all this, he asked the wind element guards to gather together. He stood on the top of the tower, feeling the fluctuations in the wilderness through the symbol given by the queen. The rune on the back of his hand reappeared, flickering like breathing. After a while, Chen Yu turned his head and looked somewhere. That position was the center of the light circle formed by the Black Tower formation. It seems that the various tribes set up a formation with this phoenix as the center. Quote, maybe it is to provide energy for the phoenix corpse, hoping that it can be revived one day. Chen Yu jumped up and rushed to the destination with the wind element guards. Elf Garden. The elf queen sat on a rattan chair, her eyes were empty, and she seemed to be thinking about something. In fact, what she saw was exactly what Chen Yu saw. Through the mark imposed on Chen Yu's hand, the queen gained a common vision with Chen Yu. She wanted to see how Chen Yu would act in this crisis. And the previous whisper of the wind made the queen smile. Not to mention anything else, Chen Yu had already won her recognition for this strength alone. My dear, if you can get the next one, it will be a great opportunity. The queen said softly. The abyss sandworm screamed on the ground. The scream was like sand and iron grinding, extremely harsh. It kept rolling on the ground, but it didn't dare to drill into the ground. Because its skin and tissues had been cut into rags by the whisper of wind. If it drilled into the ground, it would probably lose a limb when it came out. But no matter what, Chen Yu's long-prepared fierce attack did not kill Shatun. After all, it was a peak-level monster, and it finally held on. The sandworm smelled the smell in the air, turned its head and rushed towards Chen Yu desperately. It had only one thought at this moment. Revenge. Kill that young man. Let him also taste the taste of thousands of cuts. But Chen Yu didn't have the time to take care of it now. A group of wind element guards guarded him on the side, carrying him forward at a very fast speed. Their goal was the center of the Black Tower formation. Wherever they passed, the wind howled. Even if the sandworm rolled behind them and made mud and sand all over the sky, they could not shorten the distance between them. At this time, the legions from various countries finally arrived at the battlefield. On the side of the sandworm, the first to rush out was the Dwarf Legion. This was a group of warriors who were all wearing heavy armor and holding heavy hammers like iron piers. The general in the lead had his beard tied into a braid and opened his mouth to make a strange cry. Good guys of Tianxing, let's watch our dwarves' performance next. Big Bug, you ran away before we appeared, are you afraid? The sandworm heard the words of the dwarf general, and his anger went up a level. It was chasing Chen Yu, but these dwarves actually thought it was afraid to run away. Come to die. The sandworm gave up Chen Yu, who couldn't catch up, opened its huge mouth like a turntable and pounced on the dwarf. The abyss sandworm that can reach the strength of one turn. Before this bite went down, the pressure had already locked all the dwarves. But the dwarves were not afraid. They shortened the distance between each other and raised their shields to form a shield formation. Boom! The sandworm pounced down and a fierce battle broke out with the dwarf army. In other directions, the legions from the human race entered the battlefield in a Geji army formation. Among them, the legion commander in the direction of Storm City was shocked to find that the battlefield where he was full of corpses. Monster corpses. They rushed here in a hurry, but it seemed that they had nothing to do. Standing on a low hill not far away and paying attention to the battle situation, Shuhi and others ignored the legion. Bex and Lanya looked at Shuhi and the other two with complicated and odd eyes. The legion intervened in the black wilderness, and the battle had not yet completely broken out. Huge stone pillars suddenly protruded from the black wilderness. Each of these stone pillars was 100 meters high, and it looked like a pillar supporting the sky from below. There were also stone pillars outside the black tower formation that tried to break out of the ground, but they were suppressed by the light. Faced with this strange phenomenon, neither Bard nor Grawl, nor even the commanders of the legions were surprised. Because they know that when fighting against the abyss, there is no need to be surprised by any reversals and twists. Every action of the abyss must be fully prepared. They are not the kind of brainless monsters who only obey their instincts and rush recklessly. On the contrary, there is a commander with extremely high intelligence behind the abyss. This is a terrible force that has swallowed up countless worlds. The Black Wilderness was a large battlefield against the abyss. According to historical records, when the battle was the most intense, the strong men who fought here were even at the 8th level. Even the stars in the sky were caught and bombarded in this wilderness. The abyss, which has had experience once, must have multiple backups when it launches again. At present, it is just entering the second stage. Boom! The dwarf general hammered the sandworm into 2 pieces with a hammer and stepped on the sandworm's head. At this time, he exuded a fierce flame breath, and his strength was sublimated by 1 level. The sandworm, which was at the end of its strength, could not withstand 3 of his hammers. You fools from the abyss! The second round has begun. Not willing to be outdone, the dwarf general took the lead in declaring war on the abyss forces. As if everyone had heard the words of the dwarf general, the other legions on the battlefield also shouted together. Come and fight! Come and fight! Ha 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 ha! Kill! Titan Grar was in high spirits, and his blood boiled when he heard the shouts of the legions. He tore off his leather armor, revealing his marble-like muscles. On his navy blue skin, white divine patterns lit up, and his eyes turned white. Titan also broke out into the second stage. In the depths of the black wilderness, the deep passage guarded by the giant tentacle monster was still slowly turning. Faced with the provocation of the various forces in the new world, the existence behind the abyss seemed to disdain to respond. The style of this commander was completely different from that of the abyss dragon. At this moment, Chen Yu finally arrived at the blockade center of the black tower formation. Here, the space seems to be particularly solid, making Chen Yu feel like he is trapped in a prison. He tried to throw a punch, but found that even the wind of the punch could not be generated. It seems that the seal has caused the space here to be reinforced. Chen Yu fell to the ground and was about to search for where the seal was. Suddenly, the voice of the elf queen came to his ears. Stretch out your hand, I will activate the seal. Have you been following me? My dear, this is one of the effects of the divine pattern I put on your hand. Okay. Quote. Hearing the queen's explanation, Chen Yu raised his hand, and the divine pattern on the back of his hand immediately shone brightly. At the same time, a warm feeling came from the sacrificial sun disk in his arms. The spiritual will of the elf queen actually descended here just like he did before. But whether it was the wind element guards or the high turning masters fighting in the distance, they knew nothing. Only the giant tentacle monster guarding the entrance of the deep passage tilted its head slightly and looked over here. It seemed to be listening to something, and its huge body slowly squirmed. But before it could react, a honeycomb barrier suddenly lit up where Chen Yu was. "You stay here." After the barrier lit up, Chen Yu stepped in as soon as possible. The next moment, he appeared in a red world full of Mars. The earth was red, the sky was red, and the Mars floating everywhere was also red. The illusory figure of the elf queen walked beside Chen Yu and took him all the way forward. The two soon came to a huge deep pit. Chen Yu looked down from the edge and gasped. The diameter of the pit was almost 10 kilometers, and it was several kilometers deep underground. In the center of the pit, a fiery red phoenix lay quietly. After hundreds of years, the phoenix's feathers still exuded a glow of vitality. It was as if it was just resting here, not dead. Chen Yu could even feel the huge vitality coming from the phoenix. Around the pit of the phoenix, there were 99 black metal nails nailed to the ground. Whenever the nails lit up, vitality would surge out of the phoenix. But after the vitality surged out, it was absorbed above and dissipated into nothingness. The elf queen frowned slightly, and her expression became a little serious. "I said why the phoenix hasn't been resurrected for so long. Someone did something. For hundreds of years, the tribes had not come to the Black Wilderness because of their own affairs. I didn't expect that there would be changes here." Chen Yu looked at the queen in confusion, and the queen explained to the young druid in a gentle voice. It turned out that the monsters killed by the Black Tower formation would have their life essence extracted and merged into the phoenix. The phoenix itself is the nemesis of evil, and even the breath of the abyss cannot erode them. So there is no need to worry that the life essence of the monsters will pollute the phoenix. When the abyss invaded this world on a large scale, the Phoenix clan was the first to suffer for this reason. But now it seems that the phoenix's vitality has been attracted to an unknown place. And the one who can do this must be one of the several major clans that worked together to set up the formation. The Black Hand behind the scenes has been extracting the phoenix's vitality for all these years. Chen Yu can feel the anger in the queen's heart. The former ally, after falling, was actually used in this way. This is different from the queen asking Chen Yu to try his luck. Condensing the beast soul from the phoenix's corpse does not affect the queen's revival of the phoenix. But continuously extracting the phoenix's vitality means that the phoenix will be trapped in a state of death forever. The other party is definitely premeditated, and no one knows what they have done with the phoenix's life for hundreds of years. I want to trace the source of the disappearance of vitality. Go down and try to condense the beast soul first. Has Enloyue mentioned to you that it is not necessary to kill to condense the beast soul? The beast soul essentially allows your spiritual will to simulate the creature to form a container. Killing the other party is just to make it easier for your spirit to perceive. The elf queen gave Chen Yu a brief explanation, and then her spirit flew into the sky. She wanted to find out the mastermind behind the extraction of the phoenix's life, so she couldn't simply interrupt the process. Only by following the path of life information can she have a chance to get a glimpse of the details of the mastermind behind the scenes. Chen Yu spread his wings and flew to the bottom of the deep pit. The closer he got, the more he was impressed by the huge size of the phoenix. When he looked at the top of the deep pit, the phoenix seemed to be only a dozen meters long. But when he got close, the body of the phoenix was 100 meters long. If the tail feathers are included, it would be 200 meters long. Chen, it was the first time that you saw the legendary sacred creature, and he was immediately filled with emotion. What Blue Star said was right, the new era had really arrived. Even creatures like the phoenix now appeared in front of him. This was not some fantasy recorded in ancient books, nor was it a fake thing. This was the phoenix, the real phoenix. He landed in front of the phoenix's head. Back then, this phoenix should have been hit directly on the head by a sharp weapon, and died with serious injuries. Until now, there is a clearly visible wound on the phoenix's head, which has never healed. All the sparks scattered throughout this space came from the phoenix's wound. Dead Phoenix. The legendary Phoenix clan, it is said that they have the ability to achieve nirvana. Unknown attributes. Unknown skills. He habitually threw an identification spell, and as expected, a bunch of question marks were returned. Chen Yu took a deep breath and calmed down. He stretched out his palm with the queen's divine rune mark and gently touched the phoenix's beak. The elf queen's divine rune immediately turned into a stream of light, from Chen Yu to Chen Yu. Yu's hand flowed to the phoenix. At this moment, the divine pattern connected Chen Yu and the phoenix. In his spiritual world, a huge phoenix appeared. A phoenix cry like iron and gold resounded through his spiritual world, making him freeze. This is a sacred creature. The beast soul type that is said to be the most difficult to condense. Chen Yu regretted not learning from Enloyue for a while. However, Enloyue had already taught him the core of the beast soul skills. Chen Yu tried to guide the beast soul to let his soul power simulate the phoenix in his mind. Since the queen said that condensing the beast soul is a simulation, then he will simulate it first. After a while, beads of sweat fell on Chen Yu's face. Since he changed his job, it was the first time he felt so strenuous. The phoenix in the spiritual world seemed fixed, but in fact it kept changing. Every time he simulated a part, he would find that the phoenix changed again. If he still kept this part unchanged, the final image would be a far cry from the phoenix. The result would probably be a branch of the phoenix. After trying many times, Chen Yu could not complete it successfully. But a flash of inspiration suddenly came to his mind. He remembered the unique freehand painting technique of Xia country. Those great painters were not bound by reality when depicting the beauty or wonders of nature. They would capture the essence of the scenery and then put it on paper by leaving blank spaces. Focus on meaning rather than form. With meaning, there will be spirit resemblance, and with spirit resemblance, the form will naturally be similar. Chen Yu caught this flash of inspiration in his mind and suddenly output all his magic power. Then he took out another soul bead. This was the perfect soul bead specially equipped for him by the Xia Country Professional Association from the treasury. Holding the soul bead in his hand, Chen Yu printed the phoenix he visualized into the soul bead. The queen's divine pattern also guided the breath of the phoenix into it at this time. The mist inside the soul bead began to churn violently, trying to condense into shape. Chen Yu did not dare to relax and tried to activate the beast soul skill. You use the beast soul skill on the phoenix corpse. It is detected that your spiritual will is simulating the phoenix, and the success rate has increased to 45%. The success rate has increased to 66%. The success rate has increased to 41%. The success rate has increased to 53%. Chen Yu was surprised to find that the beast soul skills that could not be intervened after being released in the past. Now the success rate can still emerge continuously. It turns out that simulating the creatures to be subdued in the spiritual world can also bring such an effect. He noticed that the success rate of the beast soul fluctuated with the changes in the shape of his soul bead. When he simulated the essence of the phoenix, the success rate would increase accordingly. When he made a mistake in the simulation, the success rate would decrease. In this way, Chen Yu immediately felt relieved. This is equivalent to a cheat assisting Chen Yu, prompting Chen Yu that your last simulation was correct, and continue. Your simulation at this step is wrong, it is best to start over. The druids in the New World don't have this ability. Chen Yu couldn't help but feel lucky that he was a professional, which saved him a lot of energy. He kept adjusting the simulation of the phoenix according to the reminder of the skill. The success rate also began to rise steadily. 55%, 61%, 69%, 77%, 84%, 95%. 100%. Now, Chen Yu suddenly exerted his strength, and the beast soul skill was completely activated. The phoenix projected in his spiritual world made a long cry and burst into a fierce fire. In the soul bead, all the mist began to spin wildly, and a big bird gradually took shape inside. On the body of the phoenix, the feathers moved without wind, and the sparks floated more swayingly. Even the vitality emitted from the body became surging. The elf queen who traced the source with the elf secret method above opened her eyes in surprise. Although she had told Chen Yu very simply before. But in fact, to condense the beast soul with such a sacred creature of this level. According to her estimation, Chen Yu would need at least a month, or even a year. This was her original design. If Chen Yu can condense the beast soul and transform into a phoenix in a short time, then it is okay to go out and participate in the battle. If Chen Yu cannot condense in a short time, then he can stay here and not fight with the abyss. It is normal for a battle in the abyss to last for 10 days or half a month. But the Elf Queen did not expect that Chen Yu had only been in for a short time. This caused the Phoenix Corpse to react. At this time, because the vitality became surging, the invisible fluctuations of absorbing vitality also became obvious. The Elf Queen did not care about Chen Yu, and immediately held her breath and concentrated her mind to capture the traces. In the deep pit, Chen Yu only felt that the blood in his body was burning like fire. Even his eyes were shining with fire. Black wilderness. After the towering stone pillar broke out of the ground, a pressure enveloped the entire area. The chain seal formed by the original Black Tower formation became unstable at this moment. I don't know how long the abyss has been lurking and studying in this black wilderness. The details of the Black Tower formation may have been figured out. Bard saw this scene, and his urgency became stronger. His eyes looked at the barrier in the center of the Black Tower from time to time. After Chen Yu rushed in, the barrier returned to calm. Thinking of what Chen Yu said at the beginning, the Elf Queen had another task for him. Bard could only hope that the elves had some backup. The abyss even opened the passage, but only released 3 king-level monsters. It may be terrifying for ordinary people, but for Bard, who knew the horror of the abyss, the abyss's action this time was a bit anticlimactic. There must be something wrong with the abnormality. The abyss must have secrets that they don't know. Their target may not be the Black Wilderness. This land has actually been eroded by the abyss for a long time, and it is an absolute Jedi. Even if you open up the land and plant food here, it may become highly toxic materials the next day. Not only Bard has doubts, but Grar on the other side is the same. Titans may be very reckless, but Titans who can grow to Grar's level will never have only muscles in their minds. They can serve as the top leaders of the Tianxing organization, and they have experienced several actions against the abyss. Which time was not full of dangers and crises. The breath of the abyss is a negative breath, which naturally has a corrosive effect on the normal world. The Black Wilderness has been invaded by nothing, so what is the point of making a fuss here? Is there still no news about the Crane Girl? Bard's voice came from afar. Grar knocked the earth dragon to the ground with a punch, spit out a mouthful of blood foam, and shook his head. Boom! Some of the stone pillars on the Black Wilderness suddenly exploded. After each stone pillar exploded, it would release a thick black fog. The black fog contained an astonishing death aura. Some of the human legions that were close to them just accidentally inhaled a breath and fell to the ground wailing. After a few seconds, the soldiers who inhaled the mist stood up again. But they had already become demonized soldiers who had lost their minds. Seeing this horrifying scene, many legions formed a formation and retreated, trying to get out of the range of the black fog. Even the dwarf legion that hammered the sandworm stopped its advance with a solemn look. At this time, the battle was still concentrated on the edge of the Black Wilderness. More than 200 kilometers away from the area where the transmission channel was located. The black fog formed after the stone pillar exploded was intercepted by the light of the Black Tower, and the two continued to clash. Shuhi and others who had been watching the battle from afar had very serious expressions at this time. The intensity of the abyss explosion is much more severe in the real world. It should be related to the world barrier. The abyss's erosion of the New World began thousands of years ago. The barriers of the New World have long been riddled with holes, unlike the real world. Hearing the conversation between Shuhi and the old principal, Bex and Lanya next to them looked sideways frequently. But the two did not deny their discussion. Because of the existence of high-level professional transfers, the strong people in this world have explored the origin of the world deeply. They have long known that there are multiple worlds. Some of them are called the main world, such as here. Some are called small worlds, which exist dependent on the main world, such as the legendary soul world, spirit world, etc. If the abyss is negative, then these worlds are positive, and the two cannot coexist. According to the normal process, the abyss will swallow up one world after another. But the new world resisted the abyss and dragged it to the second main world to merge. Now the high-level people in the new world have two mainstream voices about the world where Shuhi and others are. One is to advocate the union of the real world to fight against the abyss together. The other is to absorb and digest the real world as the rear of the new world or start a new one. The premise of the alliance is that the real world must have a certain strength. Otherwise, what is the meaning of the alliance? The invasion of the abyss into reality requires additional energy consumption. The fusion of the new world and the real world happens naturally. The barriers of the two worlds will gradually merge. Shuhi and the old principal looked at the fierce battle in front of them and became more and more worried about the development speed of the real world. Although they are already catching up, it is still not enough to impress the new world. Just looking at the aftermath of the Battle of Bard and others, countless human cities can be destroyed. That is to say, the environment of the Black Wilderness is special, otherwise it would cause a huge humanitarian disaster today. Since the stone pillar exploded and the black fog rose again, the situation has become unpredictable again. But at this time, there was a new movement in the sky in the distance. Shuhi turned his head and found that a group of air support was arriving quickly. A group of huge griffins flapping their wings carrying fully armed knights were rushing quickly. There were two figures at the forefront of the griffin army. One of them also rode a griffin, but the griffin under his mount was much larger than the others. The person next to him had white wings on his back and wore a white dress. The woman in the white dress had a half-covered mask on her face, completely covering her eyes. After approaching the Black Wilderness, she took out a staff as tall as a person and clasped her hands. A strange tone of yin and yang came out of her mouth. Then a huge light emanated from the staff, as if a sun emerged. The light of this sun was linked to all the lights of the Black Tower, forming a huge barrier. All the abyss stone pillars began to vibrate and crack on the surface. It's the crane lady Xing Ryan. The one accompanying is the Golden family's Griffin Corps. That's the great lion Duke Benna, Lanya said in surprise. The third senior member of the Tianxing organization finally arrived at the battlefield. And it seems that he came prepared, and his first move was a large-scale control skill. After suppressing the black fog and the stone pillars, the crane lady Ryan chanted the spell again. The next moment, all the warriors who were fighting against the abyss were illuminated by light. This light made their strength soar suddenly, and everyone was strengthened. Even Bard and Grar were no exception. I will deal with the tentacle monster. The rest of you, destroy the stone pillar with all your strength. The knight riding the giant griffin shouted loudly, and the griffin army behind him immediately divided into several teams and joined the battle. The aura of this Duke Benna exploded again and again, and he was also a powerful man who had sublimated to the third level. As soon as he entered the battlefield, he was as unstoppable as a meteor. The big griffin burst out with an energy aura visible to the naked eye, and pounced fiercely on the tentacle monster that was as big as a hill. The tentacle monster was also unwilling to be outdone, and its huge tentacles swept across in turns. Holy shock! Duke Benna and the eagle merged into one, ignoring the tentacles that were coming at them, and slammed into the tentacle monster and the passage behind. He actually included the tentacle monster and the passage in his attack range. The arrival of this reinforcement once again led all the legions to launch an attack on the Black Wilderness. The situation of the battle was obviously overturned at this moment. Bex and Lanya both showed excitement, and they were trembling with excitement. Shuhi and others also breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, as long as the abyss can be suppressed, it means that things have not deteriorated. Chen Yu is still in there. But with the addition of Crane Girl and Duke Benna, the aftermath of the battle became more and more violent. It was already difficult for them to watch the battle at this distance, and they could only retreat again and again. At this time, inside the Black Tower barrier, the soul bead in Chen Yu's hand burst into a dazzling light, so hot that his hand almost couldn't hold it. In the sea of AA souls, the beast soul of the earth giant bear trembled. The beast soul of the emperor ape beetle was eager to fight. The consciousness of the world tree was still confused and unmoved. In front of the three souls, a tumbling bird was rapidly taking shape. Above the phoenix corpse, the elf queen had also felt the general direction of the passing of life. Just as she was about to start to tear open the void anchor coordinates, suddenly a shadow appeared in the barrier. The shadow was suspended opposite the queen, and the shadow seemed to have stars flashing. The moment this figure appeared, the queen felt tense all over, and a sense of crisis surged in her heart. The queen of the elves. Spiritual body. I didn't expect to meet you here. The star shadow sent out soul fluctuations and transmitted them to the queen's mind. His body turned a circle, as if he was appreciating the surrounding scenery. Finally, his eyes fell on the body of the phoenix, and saw Chen Yu and the disappearing vitality. We should have been partners in the common struggle, but we were used after death. You creatures in this world are still so hypocritical. The star shadow continued. The elven queen's eyes were stern, and she went straight into a fighting posture. In the sacrificial garden of the elven royal court, the elven queen was in great momentum. The other elf masters in the royal court all looked in the direction of the queen. Don't act like this. If your real body was here, I would be a little bit afraid. It's just a spiritual will, and it will be destroyed. Star Shadow landed on the body of the phoenix, as if he was admiring the phoenix's miserable state. The breath of the abyss began to emanate from his body. The bird feathers of the phoenix suddenly burned after coming into contact with the breath of the abyss. The flame seemed to burn all the breath of the abyss and prevent the breath of the abyss from falling on him. Even if he died, the phoenix still stayed away from the abyss. It was just a transfer, but I didn't expect to have unexpected gains. You still think the abyss has some intentions for the Black Wilderness? Haha, I'll give you this piece of land. But before the transfer, I want the body of this phoenix. If you don't show up, I won't be able to enter this barrier. Maybe this is what you often call fate. Haha. Star Shadow raised his hands, and invisible pressure immediately enveloped the entire barrier. The spiritual will of the elf queen fluctuated like water ripples and could no longer maintain its normal form. The shadow from the abyss is right. The spiritual will is just a manifestation of the queen with the help of the sun disk. The strength it possesses is not even 1/10 of the queen's, and there is no way to resist. She can see that the shadow that descended here must be the commander behind the Black Wilderness abyss. The opponent's body is still in the abyss, but only a wisp of consciousness is projected here. But because the Black Wilderness itself was eroded, this place is also considered half of the abyss. The power he has is stronger than that of the queen. And now, he is going to take the body of the phoenix away. The queen took a deep breath and was about to explode her spiritual will regardless of everything. But she heard a voice from below. What are you laughing at? Chen Yu, who had opened his eyes at some point, looked at the shadow in front of him. His soul sea has returned to calm, and the soul bead in his hand no longer trembles and heats. As he spoke, the soul bead sank into his body and returned to his body. The next moment, the Emperor Ape Beetle responded to the call, merged with him, and changed its form. Just a young man who has not yet sublimated. I saw the whisper of the wind you exploded in the outside world. Do you think such an attack can hurt me? You know nothing about the abyss. The shadow didn't take Chen Yu seriously at all. But before he finished speaking, the shell on Chen Yu's body suddenly exploded. Explosion. Chen Yu, Druid, Emperor Ape Beetle form, explosion stacking. Attributes. Strength, 1,877,040. Agility, 208,624. Physical fitness, 429,000. Spirit, 304,668. Will, 71,550. Strength attribute exceeded 1 million. Approaching 2 million. The exploded shell had the special effect of dragon roar hitting the shadow head on. The shadow was instantly torn into pieces, and trembled violently like the queen. The next second, he had rushed in front of the shadow, with 4 arms open. Each fist was accompanied by a dazzling lightning, which was the addition of the Thunder Heart. Without giving the shadow any time to react, Chen Yu seized this brief moment of fluctuation. Punching, punching again, punching crazily. General attack with thunder and dragon roar special effects. Chen Yu dealt explosive damage in just 1 second. Behind Chen Yu, the shadow-like Emperor Ape Beast Spirit also appeared, punching crazily as well. Secondary damage superposition. In just this moment, the shadow was completely blasted into debris by Chen Yu. The Elf Queen looked at it with sparkling eyes, and was also amazed at Chen Yu's individual attributes. But as the commander of the abyss, would the shadow be so easily blasted to pieces by Chen Yu? The Elf Queen shouted to Chen Yu to be careful. Chen Yu's compound eyes lit up red, but he found that he could no longer move without knowing when. The shadow under his feet was fixed by a strange force. The dissipated shadow condensed again from behind him. But this time, the shadow's breath seemed a little embarrassed and a little angry. You have succeeded in angering me, human. Your blasphemy against the abyss will become your nightmare in the future. I will imprison your soul in the abyss and use the fire of the abyss to give you eternal pain. The stars in Shadow's body lit up arcs, and his hands turned into countless illusory black lines that wrapped around Chen Yu's body. The beast spirit of the Emperor Ape Beetle groaned and felt the terrible pressure. The whole body was creaking, and the newly born fragile shell was constantly cracking. However, the beast spirit of the Emperor Ape Beetle was not afraid. It even turned around and showed Shadow a hideous smile. It seemed to say, "You made a big mistake. You shouldn't have blown me up." Shadow turned a blind eye. He had absolute confidence. Here, in the black wilderness, in the barrier where there are no high-turning strongmen, he is invincible. A mere queen's will, a mere unsublimated human. Even if you have the strength of the peak of the first turn through special means, so what? What can you do to me? How can you know the power of the abyss? Explode. Human, I accept your soul. The shadow of the abyss knew that Chen Yu was a druid. To deal with a druid, as long as his beast soul exploded, 80% of his strength would be wasted. As he exerted his strength, the Emperor Ape Beetle finally couldn't hold on and exploded into a starlight. The shadow's hand continued to move forward, and he was about to take down the human body. But the human, who should have fallen into weakness as the beast soul exploded, chuckled. Are you done? It's only the second round now, rubbish. Soul sacrifice. Buzz. The exploding beast soul starlight suddenly paused. A force from the highest descended here, ignoring the shadow's blockade, and acting on Chen Yu. The starlight in the sky was sucked into Chen Yu's body again. His individual strength skyrocketed wildly in the shadow's shocked eyes. Time seemed to be stretched infinitely long at this moment. When the shadow's hand finally fell on Chen Yu, he raised his hand and held it down. The young man was not going to talk about martial ethics. Chapter 91. Star Shadow tried to press down Chen Yu's hand. But he was surprised to find that the hand seemed to be made of divine gold. Starlight flashed in his eyes, sweeping over Chen Yu. 2 million strength attributes. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. You are obviously not sublimated. How can you have such a strength attribute? Star Shadow was so excited that his figure was blurred. The elf queen in the sky had a bright look in her eyes. Chen Yu laughed and felt the abundant power in his body. Chen Yu, Druid, LV 50. Attributes. Strength, 2,047,680. Agility, 226,304. Constitution, 507,000. Spirit, 382,788. Will, 89,896. Characteristics. Tear, Earth Power, Armor, Perseverance, World, Martial Will. Title, Historical Observer, Dragon Slayer, Elf Hope. I find that you, the group of abyssal people, are very arrogant. That dragon is like this, and so are you. Why can't you accept the facts in front of you? This is the result of my hard training. You are a druid without beast soul transformation, a human who has not ascended or descended. Why does he have 2 million strength attributes in normal form? Star Shadow had infinite complaints in his heart. But the elf queen knew that the young man in front of him had just participated in the novice trial. According to the rules of the other world, the novice trial is a test for the newly awakened professionals. That is, it took this young man in front of him more than a month to grow to this level. What a monster! Star Shadow finally calmed down and returned to his indifferent attitude again. Although he was shocked by Chen Yu's attributes in normal state, he did not panic after calming down. After all, Chen Yu at this moment was at most a little stronger than the Emperor Ape Beetle. Even the Emperor Ape Beetle, 960, could not withstand his attack. Chen Yu's body is enough. I can blow you up once. I can blow you up countless times. Let go. Xingqian Shadow exerted force on his hands, and unparalleled power burst out from his body, trying to break free from Chen Wei's tail. But Chen Yu's body simultaneously gushed out golden red flames. The golden red flames burned around him, and even his hair floated up. His eyes turned from black to gold, and his momentum began to expand. I can't do anything to you under normal circumstances. But I can transform. Come out. Phoenix form. Chen Yu pressed his left hand on the natural belt. I don't know when, I have to wear a golden red soul bead, and the resonance broke out at this time. The golden red flame spun violently, whistling an enveloping star shadow. A golden phoenix appeared in front of Star Shadow. Clang! The phoenix cried. Star Shadow felt that his aura of the abyss was melted away, and his strength was suppressed. He bent his legs uncontrollably. Level 5 Sacred, Phoenix Form LVI Upper Limit LVO. Basic Blessing. Basic Attributes plus 10 per level. Attribute Blessing. Spirit, Agility plus 100%, Will plus 150% plus 1 level increases by 10%. Features, Nirvana. After exploding, the body will be resurrected again, and all attributes will be temporarily increased by 50%, with a cooling period of 30 days. Skills. Breaking Evil. Passive, has the function of reducing and eliminating negative energy, minimum 20%. Breaking Delusion. Passive, attack carries 25% true damage. Life Fire. Will can be converted into vitality, enjoying the highest increase. 1 point of will is converted into 20 points of life. Holy Body. Absorbs magic damage and converts it into will, and continuously consumes magic power after activation, with a minimum absorption of 20%. Phoenix Wings. The body is transformed into energy shock, continuously consumes magic power, and the damage is both magic and martial arts. Sacred Soul. A beast soul evolved from the corpse of the phoenix with unique techniques. Immortal Will. Eternal life. Strong. Although it was estimated long ago, when Chen Yu really saw the changes brought by the phoenix form, he still cried out. The phoenix characteristic is nirvana, with resurrection. That is to say, when the phoenix is blown up, it can enter the burst state, and all attributes are enhanced by 50%. In addition, like the World Tree, which is also a 5th level sacred, it has 5 skills. But compared with the World Tree that tends to be auxiliary, the skills of the phoenix are more powerful. The 2 passive skills of Breaking Evil and Breaking Delusion, one is a natural nemesis of the abyss, and the other has real damage. From now on, Chen Yu's attack will become more terrifying, and the outcome of the abyss enemies against him will be extremely tragic. And the life fire can transform will into vitality, which is equivalent to thickening his health bar. It makes his already strong vitality even more exaggerated. The holy body has the effect of magic immunity. Even if the enemy's strength exceeds him by too much, it can absorb at least 20%. After absorption, it is transformed into will, and with the life fire, his endurance will be even more terrifying. These 4 skills are all to strengthen themselves, and the last skill, Phoenix Wings Sky Soaring, is an active attack skill. Chen Yu in the form of a phoenix has a wingspan of 30 meters, and his claws are like the strongest divine gold. The huge bird's beak is shining with cold light, and his eyes are locked on the Star Shadow. It is just a Star Shadow transformed by a split soul, and there is no way to resist it. Open black lens bracket Chen Yu, Phoenix form close black lens bracket. Strength, 3,071,520. Agility, 882,586. Constitution, 760,500. Spirit, 2,258,449. Will, 575,334. After the strength attribute, the spirit attribute also exceeded 1 million, and it soared to 2 million. Because the spirit tree wristband, the wind elf crown and the natural belt all have spiritual blessings. Star Shadow was anxious and angry at this time. Never expected that this druid would be so perverted. He thought he would have absolute control here. Even if the elf queen blew herself up, he would not be afraid. But he didn't expect that a person he ignored would press him to the ground with his legs bent. Don't even think about it. How could he kneel down? Star Shadow exploded again, and the stars in his body exploded like supernovas. The surging breath of the abyss mixed with violent flames sprayed out. However, the phoenix in front of him had a pair of golden eyes that were indifferent. Clang! The abyss breath hit the golden flame of the phoenix, and it immediately disappeared into thin air. The energy impact after the abyss breath disappeared only disturbed his flying feathers. The other bird claw was raised and pressed down together. The suppression of 3 million forces was accompanied by the power of thunder. Star Shadow's eyes were red, and he knelt on the ground with a click. From the queen's perspective, it was as if he was kneeling on the ground, facing the phoenix corpse to atone for his sins. The elf queen couldn't help but put her hand over her mouth, and her heart was surging at this moment. And Star Shadow felt that blood rushed to his head at this moment, and his whole body swelled violently. He couldn't stand such an insult. Self-explosion. Boom. The violent power rushed out from all directions, and the black nails transformed by the Black Tower formation were all smashed into pieces. Most of the formation guarding the Phoenix corpse was destroyed. The ever-flowing vitality began to dissipate, and the channel in the void also disappeared. The Elf Queen's eyes were stern, and she didn't care about the shock brought by Chen Yu. She tore forward with both hands. She grabbed the last remaining breath of the channel and forcibly tore open the void. The chaotic void appeared in front of the queen. Her gaze passed through the endless void and finally fell on the place where the waves calmed down. The queen didn't care about doing anything secretive at this time. The mental power exploded and tore open the chaotic void. Boom. Behind the crack, there was a huge underground city. I remember the breath here, traitor. The queen's voice came from afar, resounding in the underground city like thunder. Many creatures living here were alarmed. But before they could react, a powerful force broke out in a towering fortress in the center of the underground city. That force smoothed the wrinkles of space and forcibly closed the gap in the void torn by the queen. In the barrier, the Elven Queen closed her eyes. She was just a spiritual body, and she could only do this step at most. The phoenix transformed by Chen Yu had flown to her side at some point. Traitor. Yes, the only one who can draw away the vitality of the phoenix is the one who worked together to set up the formation back then. The Elven Queen did not hide it from Chen Yu. For some reason, she always wanted to say more to Chen Yu. Moreover, Chen Yu, who had transformed into a phoenix at this moment, naturally made her, as an elf, feel good about him. For some reason, the queen raised her hand and stroked Chen Yu's face. Chen Yu shook his head. Your Majesty, although I have joined the elves, it is not good for you to do this. Now the arrangement in the barrier is destroyed, what should we do? Can it be repaired? It can't be repaired. It was a formation built by the combined strength of various races. I can't repair it alone. The Elf Queen also realized that her behavior was a bit rude, and her pretty face blushed. Her already beautiful face blushed, which made Chen Yu look a little straight. However, the queen's next words made Chen Yu frown. After all, the original body of the Star Shadow was the commander of the Abyss, and his strength was not bad. Chen Yu was bullying the other party because his split body was not strong enough, so he could oppress him like that. But the other party exploded, and Chen Yu couldn't stop it. He could sense that this barrier would not last long after losing its energy supply. When the phoenix's body was exposed to the outside world, it was conceivable what kind of sensation it would cause. I'm afraid all kinds of monsters would come out. The Elf Queen obviously thought of this, and her eyebrows slightly frowned. Although there were traitors among the allies back then, the Phoenix clan fought to the death. She definitely didn't want the phoenix's body to be taken away. Thinking of this, the queen suddenly looked at Chen Yu beside her. My dear, after you turned into a world tree, it seems that you have a small world. Yes, it is. Chen Yu stopped talking halfway. Now he has a small world not only when he transforms into a world tree. After being blown up once, he also inherited the world characteristics of the world tree and carried a small world with him. It is more than enough to put down the phoenix corpse in front of him. But, instead of putting it in his small world, it is better to put it in the small world of the world tree. Because of the injury, the world tree has been relying on his vitality to survive. It is necessary to replenish the effect of 1000 units of water of life to completely save the world tree. Any living thing, as long as it is placed in the small world of the world tree, will be devoured by its vitality. But isn't this a coincidence? Although the phoenix in front of him has fallen, its corpse has retained abundant vitality for so many years. During the period, with the help of the formation, it has been continuously replenished. Although a lot of it was taken away by the unknown behind-the-scenes mastermind, there are still a lot left. If the phoenix's vitality is absorbed by the world tree, maybe the problem can be solved in one go. The more Chen Yu thought about it, the more excited he became. The gaze towards the phoenix corpse below also became fiery. Fortunately, he was in the form of a phoenix, and his golden eyes were fiery and not eye-catching. This is a martyr who fought against the abyss, his body must not be desecrated. Since he has not been able to be resurrected for so many years, I think it is destined. I will take the body away, return to the imperial court, and then give it to you, the queen, to place it. Chen Yu said to the queen with righteousness. The queen's expression became much better after hearing this. She nodded slightly to Chen Yu. It's rare that you have this heart. I will count this as a great deed for you. When you return to the imperial court will have its own reward. Seeing the queen nod, Chen Yu switched his form without saying a word. The golden phoenix turned into the world tree and unfolded the small world belonging to the world tree. Chen Yu could clearly feel that the drowsy soul of the world tree became excited at this moment. The huge phoenix corpse was instantly transferred into the small world. After entering, Chen Yu could clearly feel that the loss of the phoenix's vitality began to accelerate. And the lost vitality was not dissipated into the void, but absorbed by the small world itself. He looked at the progress of the world tree's repair. 0.011 1000, 0.021 1000, 0.031 1000. Wow, Chen Yu couldn't help himself, and the confused soul of the world tree also expressed his joy. This recovery speed is much more efficient than absorbing the life of monsters in the battlefield before. The key is that he does not need to maintain the form of the world tree. As long as the body of the phoenix is always in the small world, the world tree can continue to recover. Until the vitality of the phoenix is completely reduced to zero. As for the phoenix body taken out when going to the imperial court, there is no sign of life or only a skeleton. Chen Yu does not care at all. You elves remember the friendship of the former allies and comrades of the phoenix. It is dead, and I am not deliberately blaspheming. It is the spirit of the world tree that actively absorbs the life of the phoenix in order to revive. A perfect excuse. The world tree is the sacred tree of your elves. Do you want a corpse or a complete world tree? Chen Yu believes that the elves will make the right decision. As for the queen's mood, the worst thing is to comfort her at that time. I didn't expect that this trip to the test of the Sky Star would finally get so much. If the queen was not next to him, Chen Yang would be so happy. Successfully exploded the Emperor Ape Beetle, consuming the power of the Star Shadow and strengthening himself. 2.9 successfully simulated the absorption of the Phoenix soul with new techniques, and obtained powerful help again. Take away the Phoenix corpse to provide perfect materials for the revival of the world tree. Help the Elf Queen find the traitor of the Alliance and gain the favor of the Elf Queen. It's like killing 4 birds with 1 stone. Next, it's time to return to the outside world and see if you can get some more benefits from the mess in the Black Wasteland. According to the Abyss Commander, what the Star Shadow said before. The Abyss's target this time is not the Black Wasteland at all. This piece of corroded land is meaningless to them. What the Star Shadow mentioned at the beginning was transfer. The Abyss forces anchored here want to transfer to a new position. Before the transfer, they will completely detonate the accumulated Abyss power here. Drag the attention of the various races in the new world in exchange for a smooth transfer. Chen Yu sorted it out in his mind and quickly came up with a complete chain. He told his guest to the Elf Queen, and the Anti-Emperor also agreed. If that's the case, the Abyss will definitely have a big explosion. Although it's a bit selfish to say this, I hope you don't go out so quickly. The Elf Queen turned around and looked at Chen Yu in the form of a phoenix. As a member of the New World, he certainly has the attitude of fighting against the Abyss without hesitation. But now the situation is obvious. When Tianxing discovered the anomaly in the Black Wasteland, the Abyss had already taken action. If you want to stop the transfer of the Abyss, the chance of success has dropped to an infinitely low point. Especially since there is no strong person above the 6th level present. The soul of the Abyss Commander, in the Queen's perception, should be a 2nd level fluctuation. But this is because of the existence of the barrier, and the Abyss cannot invest more power. But in the Black Wasteland, a place that has long been corrupted, the Abyss has no restrictions. If Chen Yu goes out rashly at this time, he may be hit hard. After all, he just made a commander kneel down in shame. In the Black Wilderness, Bard and the Red Dragon cooperated well, and the power of the Dragon Knight was undoubtedly revealed. The shadow boss hidden in the dark was suppressed and suffered terribly, and was exhausted from escaping. The ground dragon that appeared first in the abyss half knelt on the ground, unable to stand up again. Titan Grawl opposite it did not look much better. One arm drooped on the side, and the skin was covered with teeth marks, as if it could fall at any time. But compared to the ground dragon, Titan Grawl's momentum was still extremely strong. The giant tentacle monster far away at the entrance of the deep passage was ridden by the giant griffin. The sharp lion claws of the griffin kept tearing the tentacles that tried to resist. Duke Benna, who was riding on the griffin, was responsible for suppressing the tentacle monster and preventing it from erupting. As for the other legions that entered the battlefield, they were assisted by the Crane Girl and showed their power. The battle situation in the Black Wilderness has become one-sided as time goes by. But the three great warriors, Bard, Greyer, and Benna, showed no joy. On the contrary, the three of them all had a strange feeling at the moment. It was like a punch that had been prepared for a long time, and it was thrown hard, but it ended up hitting cotton. Duke Benna's heart suddenly jumped. He was the closest to the deep passage, and the hair on his body stood up at this moment. The griffin under his seat also had its mane exploded, and it didn't care about the tentacle monster, and suddenly spread its wings and retreated. But their reaction was still a step late. The deep passage, which had been silent all the time, suddenly heard a roar of extreme anger. Boom! The deep passage suddenly expanded, as if it was torn apart from behind. The giant tentacle monster, which had originally breathed a sigh of relief, trembled all over, and its tentacles were powerless and limp to the ground. A violent energy turbulence poured out from the entrance of the passage, rushing out without distinguishing between friend and foe. The tentacle monster let out a miserable cry, and was melted and decomposed into pieces under the impact. Duke Benna was also in pain, and several layers of protection on his body exploded one after another. The main feathers of the griffin under his seat flew away, and he was already unconscious. The next moment, a humanoid shadow creature with starlight flashing came out from inside. As soon as he appeared, a terrible pressure enveloped the whole scene. If Chen Yu was here, he would be able to recognize that this was the Abyss Commander. But it was still not the real body. The one who appeared in the Black Wilderness was still the soul of the Abyss Commander. But compared to the one in the barrier, the strength of this Abyss Commander was even stronger. Whether it was Bard or Grawl, or even Duke Benna 09, they all felt oppressed. This proved that the strength of the Soul Commander was even higher than them. Third turn, around level 50, there is definitely no peak, there is a fight. The red dragon was not to be outdone and roared. Bard shouted at Grawl and Duke Benna. Duke Benna turned over and landed, resisting his griffin and protecting it behind him. Over there, Grawl took advantage of the turbulence and burst into a strong thunder and light, completely resuscitating the earth dragon. And Bard's red dragon also did not let go of the opponent. The dragon claws forcibly pressed down the shadow monster, and the dragon breath continued to spray. 3 Abyss vanguards died in succession. But the Abyss Commander turned a blind eye and looked in another direction. That was the core of the Black Tower formation. It was also the place where the enchantment of the Phoenix Corpse was preserved. In the eyes of the Abyss Commander, there was nothing but anger. Insulting the Abyss. Unforgivable. A loud shout. The Abyss Commander inserted his hand into his body and pulled out a star projection in his body. When this star appeared, everyone on the battlefield felt the threat of death. Not good, hurry up. The old principal made a prompt decision, grabbed Shuhei and Li Wei with both hands, and flew back immediately. Bex and Lanya reacted quickly and turned around and ran. As for the major legions already on the battlefield, they could only gather together in grief and anger. Humble ants, you don't know how powerful the Abyss is. I just played a game with you before I left, but you are so self-righteous that you blasphemed the Abyss. Today, let me, the Lord of the Dark Star, bury this land. The commander of the Abyss, the Lord of the Dark Star, held out his hand. The star in his hand pulled out a ray of light and disappeared into the sky. The high-level official of the Tianxing organization, the Crane Girl, suddenly felt creepy. She looked up at the sky in astonishment and found that a huge star's phantom appeared in the dim sky. The phantom grew larger and larger, and finally condensed into a solid shape under the sky. It turned out to be a falling star. This commander of the Abyss actually summoned a star, and he wanted to destroy everyone in the Black Wilderness. The falling star was tens of kilometers in size. As the altitude decreased, hot flames and strong winds appeared all around. The black star from the abyss is the culprit that caused the starry sky to dim. Dark Star Lord, Lar. The lower half of Crane Girl's face that was not covered by the mask showed an uncontrollable surprise. When they heard the name from her mouth, Bard and the other 3 strong men were also shocked. To be able to leave a name in history, whether in the abyss or the new world, he is a well-deserved peerless strongman. They have naturally heard of the name of Dark Star Lord Lar. But that is only something recorded in books after all. Where can you see the appearance of historical figures with your own eyes and the shock brought by the release of the world-destroying big move? Even the old principal and Shuhei and others who had already fled far away from the black wilderness. At this moment, they were all stunned. That was a meteorite. If such a star hit the blue star, it would not only be a matter of destroying a city. The aura of Dark Star Lord Lar, who released such a blow, declined in vain. But in the end, it stabilized at the level of the 3rd turn. He ignored Bard and the others, his eyes locked on the area where the barrier was. This barrier was set up by all the tribes together, and even he couldn't break it by force. Before, he just caught the gap where the Queen and Chen Yu entered, so that a soul could flow in. But he didn't expect that it was this action that made him suffer the greatest shame since his birth. Who is he? The king of the abyss who destroyed countless worlds and dimmed the stars. Lar. This human dared to make him kneel down. The target location where the stars fell was exactly where the barrier was. But the honeycomb-shaped boundary wall of the barrier has never changed. Lar pulled with both hands, and the black stone pillars that broke through the ground before were all shattered. These stone pillars were node buildings he built in imitation of the Black Tower. Their function was not to fight against the Black Tower at all, but to connect power. Let the power of the abyss flow smoothly from one place to another. In a place where no one can peek, behind that passage. The army of the abyss had already left here through the void passage. An abyss commander covered in bone armor held a chain. A lantern was tied to the end of the chain, and with a light throw, it was thrown out of the abyss passage. The dead ground dragons, giant tentacle monsters, and shadow monsters had auras on their bodies that were attracted. They were thrown into the lantern. But at this moment, no one paid attention to the lantern stretched out from the abyss. Everyone was madly fleeing the black wilderness. The Griffin core, the Dwarf core, and the Human core. Titan Grar took out a metal sedative and stabbed it into his heart. The violent potion directly rushed into the heart, and then flowed to the whole body in an instant along with the pressure of the heart. Titan's face was blue with veins, his eyes were completely covered with bloodshot, and his expression was in great pain. But in return, his injuries were recovering rapidly. Duke Benna also gave his griffin a potion to make his partner sober and recover. Old man, we're going to fight hard next. The griffin made a weak puff, but then stood up. Bard rode the red dragon and landed between the Titan and the Duke. He was in the best condition among the 3. I will attack from now on, you will raid the formation, and the Crane Girl will assist. Duke Benna, Titan Grar, and the Crane Girl responded in unison. Bard did not try to stop the falling stars. Such a huge star was not something they could shake. Fighting against it would only waste their energy and physical strength in vain, and the gains would not outweigh the losses. They could only hope that as many warriors as possible could escape from this attack. They had to retain all their strength to fight against this terrifying abyss evil spirit. The speed at which the stars fell from the sky seemed very slow. But that was just an illusion caused by the stars being too big. In fact, in just a few minutes, the stars had already pressed down on the heads of the people. The blazing flames almost burned up the air, and those who were not strong enough would suffocate to death. Many monsters in the black wilderness were carbonized, suffocated, and suppressed. The Lord of the Dark Star did not care about their lives at all. Bard and the other 2 could no longer hold back, and burst out all their strength and rushed towards Lar. The phantom of the star in the body of the Lord of Dark Star turned, and his body did not move, and he actually fought against Bard and others on the spot. 4 third-turn strongmen joined forces to fight against the Lord of Dark Star. Even though the Lord of Dark Star has an extraordinary rank and power, he is only a third-turn soul after all. In a moment, he was beaten to pieces all over. But he still did not divert his attention. His sight was still locked on the location of the barrier. until the star fell to the ground with a bang. The sky and the earth fell into black and white, and even the sound was taken away at this moment, and it was silent. All people in this environment felt a sense of unreality. The Legion soldiers who had not yet escaped from the black wilderness looked back behind them. Their bodies were silently shattered, turned into dust, and dissipated between heaven and earth. The earth was cracking, 100 times more violent than the earth dragon turning over. Even outside the black wilderness, the ground was collapsing piece by piece. The old principal carried Shuhi and Li Wei, spitting out blood, and fell directly on a mountain peak. Shuhi raised her head in embarrassment, and at the end of her sight, the human city of Stormwind City was clearly visible. But before she could say anything, Stormwind City suddenly fell apart. The ground, buildings, and people living in the city were all swallowed up by the terrible sinkhole. Shuhi was stunned. Li Wei and the old principal were also stunned. In the rear, Bex and Lan Ya, who were protected by the shield, were also stunned by some props. That was Stormwind City. It was a big city with millions of people living there. Shuhi had lived here for several months, and her footprints were almost all over the city. But at this moment, Stormwind City was gone. Like a sand castle made by a child playing a game, it was gently pushed by the waves and there was no trace. Shuhi felt like she was shouting, but no matter who it was, no one could hear her voice. Including herself, she couldn't hear anything at this moment. She saw the old principal and Li Hui's mouths opening and closing, but there was no sound. This was an extreme explosion, and there was an explosion roar that exceeded everyone's hearing limit. As a result, everyone's hearing lost its function at this moment. Shuhi reached out and touched his ear, and found that blood was constantly flowing out of the cochlea. The eardrum had been broken long ago. Ha ha ha. Destroy it. Disappear. Only this extreme bombing can wash away your insults to me. The Lord of the Dark Star laughed loudly with excitement. The body that was beaten to pieces gathered together and recovered again. He raised his hand and pointed at the crane girl in the sky. The illusory stars in the body turned with it. Rotating starlight suddenly appeared around the crane girl. Before she could react, the starlight cut into her body like a chainsaw. The crane girl didn't even have time to scream before she fell from a high altitude. Get rid of one of the assistants first. With the remaining 3 of you, we can't be connected as one. Let me see who should be killed first. The Lord of the Dark Star looked at Bard and the other 2. Although there was only a pair of eyes on his face, everyone felt that he was smiling. This strange posture made Bard and the other 2 feel a huge pressure. Facing such a strong man, even if everyone was in the same realm, they felt a little powerless. The terrible shock wave continued, and their actions were a little difficult. The crane girl did not dodge the attack of the Lord of the Dark Star because of this. But the Lord of Dark Star 463 seemed to be able to move freely. The shock waves swept through his body, as if they penetrated an invisible object and disappeared without a trace. Even if you die today, we will bury you together. Bard spat out a mouthful of blood foam, and the red flying dragon spread its wings, and flames gushed out of its mouth. Titan Grar was almost covered with lightning, and none of the stones brought by the shock wave could get close to him. Duke Benna, with his hair and beard standing up, held a shield in one hand and a great sword in the other, holding up a large energy shield. The 3 strong men changed from the 3rd grade position to standing in a row. The momentum on them continued to rise, and each of them displayed their best skills. At this point, there was nothing to hide, and nothing to keep. As long as they could survive, everything was worth it. But the Lord of the Dark Star seemed to be still unsatisfied. He looked at the abyss passage that had become almost transparent. The devastating damage brought by the impact of the stars made the abyss passage unable to support it. But the lantern locked by the iron chain was still floating outside the passage. Asahar, release your babies. Before leaving, let the people here feel the power of the abyss. Bring back their memories and their fear of the abyss. The voice of the Lord of the Dark Star came. The dark lantern moved slightly, and a voice responded. Yes, Commander. The lantern stopped, and the flames burning inside jumped up with a whoosh. A large amount of soul fire flew out of the lantern, transforming into terrifying monsters. These monsters have different shapes, but they all have the breath of the abyss. This is a real abyss monster. Dense spiritual light, dense monsters. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. At this moment, the lantern didn't know how many abyss monsters it had released in the black wilderness. The entire black wilderness was shrouded in the breath of the abyss. The Lord of the Dark Star closed his eyes and made a sniffing motion. It was like a gourmet appreciating the deliciousness of food. Then, the next is the end. Before the word, play, was finished, the Lord of the Dark Star stopped moving. He looked behind Bard and the other two, at the center of the star bombardment, above the huge pit. A phoenix with golden light rose into the sky. Clang! The phoenix spread its wings and made a sharp cry. It was Chen Yu. The elf queen's spiritual body assimilated and combined the terrible bombardment before, protecting him. Now the entire barrier was destroyed. The elf queen's spiritual body also disappeared. But Chen Yu was unharmed. He looked at the Lord of the Dark Star in the distance, and his golden eyes revealed a surging fighting spirit. Dirty and incompetent scum of the abyss, look directly at my light. You will perish here today. Remember my name, the one who buried you. Chen Yu. The sound was accompanied by the long cry of the phoenix, not only acting in the air, but also acting on the soul level. The phoenix bird with divine light spread its wings and soared in the sky. Bard, Grail, and Duke Benna were surprised and happy. Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal who were far away in the black wilderness were also excited to stand up and watch. Bex and Lanya were extremely shocked. Even the scattered Legion soldiers who escaped the impact of the meteorite and escaped with their lives were all watching. At this moment, Chen Yu was the focus of everyone's attention. However, compared with these people in the same camp, the Lord of the Dark Star was so angry that he trembled all over. His body covered by shadows was almost twisted out of shape. The fall of stars was his ultimate move. Using this move requires extremely huge energy and consumes a star core. Even his split soul only has one chance to use it. Unexpectedly, after destroying everything, he still failed to get rid of the person he wanted to kill the most. Even, Chen Yu made a declaration to him shamelessly. Destruction. I will be destroyed. Arrogant and ignorant. Come and die. The size of the Dark Star Lord expanded rapidly. The shadow-like body spread out, like the night covering the sky. The stars in the body flashed with fascinating starlight, which made people feel frightened involuntarily. However, Chen Yu, who was locked by him, did not have a trace of fear in his heart. The phoenix sang again. I will be the MT to hold the opponent, and you will attack. As soon as the voice sounded in the minds of Bard and the other two, Chen Yu's body was shining brightly. With a flap of its wings, the phoenix turned into a stream of light and rushed towards the Dark Star Lord like an arrow. The phoenix wings soared into the sky. The unfolding night was frightened by the stream of light of the phoenix, and it could no longer continue, but slowly recovered. Breaking Evil. Passive, has the function of reducing and eliminating negative energy, with a minimum of 20%. The third level Dark Star Lord's soul has an absolute level of suppression on the unsublimated Chen Yu. But Chen Yu, with his superb comprehensive attributes, managed to withstand this pressure. The reduction of Breaking Evil finally stabilized at 35%. The Dark Star Lord was furious, ignoring Bard and the other two, and also pointed at Chen Chen. Over the long years, the Dark Star Lord has experienced countless dangers and life and death difficulties. But there has never been a moment when he was so angry. He wanted to skin Chen Yu, tear his body into pieces, and burn his soul with the fire of the abyss forever. The shadow and the phoenix light collided, and a violent impact broke out in the sky. The next moment, Chen Yu was pressed by the Dark Star Lord to fall to the ground, exploding a column of Tibetan Chinese medicine. From the perspective of strength attributes alone, the Dark Star Lord did not open up a gap with Chen Yu. The biggest reason for being pressed down by him and falling was that the Lord of Darkstar could actually mobilize the power of stars. Each of the star cores in his body had a terrible blessing. Even the soul fragments could gain a powerful amplification when the number accumulated. Chen Yu was equivalent to resisting the gravity of multiple stars. Under the impact, Chen Yu made a phoenix cry like gold and iron. But his claws firmly grasped the Lord of Darkstar, and the bird's beak, which was not as good as divine gold, pecked at the opponent fiercely. Puff! The Lord of Darkstar was pierced by the bird's beak, and his body seemed to be connected to multiple layers of starry sky, melting the attack into nothingness. But he did not completely avoid Chen Yu's attack after all. The passive ability of Breaking Delusion carries 25% true damage, and the Lord of Dark Star's body was twisted. He also groaned. But the furious Lord of Dark Star ignored it completely, and his fists contained the power of stars and smashed Chen Yu madly. In this kind of close-range fight, skills are not as direct as fists. Moreover, as a powerful person who has reached a high level of sublimation, the Lord of Dark Star is also proficient in integrating skill effects into attacks. Every punch he landed was accompanied by a strong breath of the abyss and various magical effects. But in the face of such a fierce attack, Chen Yu also fought back frantically. Holy Body activated. Absorbing magic damage and converting it into will, it will continue to consume magic power after being activated, with a minimum absorption of 20%. Life Fire activated. Will can be converted into vitality, and every 1 point of will is converted into 20 points of life. Chen Yu in Phoenix form has a physical attribute of 760,500 points. The vitality conversion ratio is 8 times, that is, 6,084,000, with a basic vitality of 6 million. Will 575,334, which is equivalent to an extra 11.5 million lives. Physical defense is 3 times that of physical strength, more than 200 square meters. Magical defense is 5 times that of spirit, more than 11 million. No matter how powerful the Lord of Dark Star is, it is limited to the strength level of the soul. Without using skills, it is impossible to burst out more than 10 million continuous attack output. Not to mention that both Breaking Evil and Holy Body can weaken the Lord of Dark Star, and the output effect is further discounted. At this moment, he is an indestructible cockroach. No matter how powerful you are, Lord of the Dark Star, you want to kill me with just one soul unless the main body is deployed. Dream on. Even if we take a few steps back, the Phoenix form is blown up, that's even better. Chen Yu absorbed the attribute enhancement brought by the Phoenix form on the spot and turned into an invincible Superman. The Earth Giant Bear Beast Soul has not been used yet. That is the representative of pure power. The Lord of the Dark Star was getting more and more frightened, and felt that his fist was like hitting a quagmire. No matter how violent his attack was, he couldn't cause serious damage to the young man in front of him. He could even feel that part of his power was absorbed by Chen Yu and converted into his vitality. This made the Lord of the Dark Star sick enough. But what made him even sicker was that Chen Yu was still fighting back. The real damage plus the special effect of tear that came from nowhere, and even the paralysis of thunder. Every time it caused him a lot of trouble, forcing him to use part of his power to resolve it. One man and one bird fought in the wilderness, causing the sky to collapse and the earth to crack. Bard, Greyer, and Duke Benna were all stunned. Especially Bard and Greyer. They were different from Duke Benna, who arrived later. They had seen Chen Yu's original appearance. Greyer cast a look at Bard. Is this the young man with potential you mentioned? Whose young man with potential can fight a strong man who has sublimated to the 3rd level without sublimation? What the hell are you looking at? Backquote. Do you really think I can't be killed? Chen Yu fought with the Lord of Dark Star for a long time, and when he looked back, he saw that the 3 big guys were still watching the fight. He was almost so angry that he couldn't help but spray directly. This finally woke up the 3 big guys. The 3 of them looked black, and rushed up with shame and anger. They have experienced so many storms, but they are still distracted at such a critical moment. Bard put his hands on the red dragon mount and directly activated the ultimate skill of the Dragon Rider. The next moment, the dragon scales all over the red dragon spread out, and the dragon fins on its back stood up. The huge body doubled in size, and blazing flames emerged from it. The ultimate skill of the Dragon Rider, Human-Dragon Integration. Completely integrate the power of the knight and the mount into one, so that the target can exert 3 times the power. Bard chose to give the effect to the red dragon. After all, in terms of combat power alone, the red dragon is stronger than him. The roaring dragon beast pounced on the battlefield, and its bloody mouth with flames directly bit the Lord of the Dark Star. The next moment, the dragon breath and instant dragon language magic poured out crazily. Ah, it hurts. It hurts so much. The Lord of the Dark Star couldn't help but scream. Originally, the Abyss monsters fought with the creatures of the main world, and the Abyss breath could weaken the effect of the main world skills. The red dragon's dragon breath and magic fell on him, and at least half of the power was reduced first. But at this time he was entangled with the phoenix Chen Yu. The phoenix's evil-breaking energy continued to work, and the abyss's breath had long become very weak. The furious Dark Star Lord hated Chen Yu even more. The abyss was desperate to wipe out the Phoenix clan because of this characteristic of the Phoenix clan. You really deserve to die. Kill me if you can. If you don't talk nonsense. Uncle Ni, not only is this little calf hateful, but his mouth is also stinky. The Lord of the Dark Star gathered the power of many stars and punched the phoenix hard on the head. This punch made Chen Yu's head sink into the ground, and his head was deformed. He then turned over and punched again, breaking one of the red dragon's arms. But the next moment, the phoenix rang, the light flashed, and the bird's head returned to its original state. The sharp bird claws seized the opportunity and stabbed him hard in the heart. The Lord of Dark Star was about to kill again, and Titan Grar turned into a thunder giant and came down with a bang. The thunder and lightning in the sky poured down on the Lord of Dark Star, and the abyss aura on the outer layer of the Lord of Dark Star was severely cut off. The huge hands grabbed the Lord of Dark Star's head and hit him with a headbutt. Boom! The Lord of Dark Star flew backwards in response. But he was not angry, but was happy in his heart, and finally broke free from Chen Yu's claws. But before he could be happy, Chen Yu took advantage of the short time when he was paralyzed and rushed up again. Phoenix wings soared in the sky. Catch it! The bird's beak slammed into the face of the Lord of Dark Star and pierced through him. Give it back to you. Chen Yu finally returned the punch that the Lord of Dark Star had hit on his head before. But his body was also pierced through by the energy impact of the Lord of Dark Star, and half of the bird's body exploded directly. Not far away, Bard and the Red Dragon tightened their bodies at the same time. The man and the dragon recalled the time when they accidentally injured Chen Yu. This guy really doesn't want to take any loss. You hit me, I will hit you back. Whether I can beat you or not is another matter. Just when Chen Yu was entangled with the Lord of Dark Star again, Duke Benna finally made a move. He didn't know when he appeared behind the Lord of Dark Star. The big shield and the giant sword in his hand crossed, and the arrogance on his body burst out, and he also made a move with the secret supercharge and slash. The huge griffin took Duke Benna, and the cross sword light grew from small to large, and it cut across at lightning speed. The Lord of Dark Star screamed again, and his body was cut into 4 pieces. The next moment, the 3 big guys and Chen Yu, who was beaten red-eyed, each stared at a piece and made a move. At the entrance of the abyss passage in the distance, which was so transparent that it almost disappeared, the lantern trembled slightly and retreated silently. The abyss passage disappeared with it. But in the abyss world behind the passage, an extremely angry will swept the surroundings like a storm. Some of the Abyss Legion warriors who had not yet retreated were all swept into powder. The Abyss commander in armor ignored the storm of will. He just used the lantern in his hand to gather the souls of the dead Abyss warriors. Then he stepped into a vortex and disappeared. The roar of the battle in the black wilderness almost resounded through the world. The people who survived the impact of the meteorite used recovery potions or props to treat their injuries. The cochlea was naturally restored and could hear the sound again. At this moment in the black wilderness, there was no black tower formation or abyss black pillar. Everywhere you look, there are terrible shock waves and explosions. I don't know how many meters the earth has been cut, there are cracks everywhere, and molten flames can be seen everywhere. There were a total of 8 legions that participated in the battle at the first time, with more than 2,000 people. But at this time, there are less than 100 people alive. The dwarves had the most survivors in the legion, with more than 20 of them. The general holding the giant hammer looked at the storm raging on the battlefield with a sad face. Those who followed him to fight were all the elite men of the dwarves. But they were all buried forever in this black land under the terrible meteorite. And the disaster was not over yet. The biggest demon, the Lord of the Dark Star, was besieged by the strong. But the countless abyss monsters released by the opponent before the battle attacked everywhere in the black wilderness. Many of them even rushed out of the black wilderness and began to attack the borders of various countries. The dwarf general was not worried about the borders of his country. The dwarves have never relaxed their vigilance against the black wilderness. There are legions stationed on the border all year round and perfect border defense arrangements. As long as they are not carried away by a wave, the dwarfs can stabilize the defense line. What he is more concerned about now is the fate of the Abyss Commander, the Lord of the Dark Star. If the soul of the Lord of the Dark Star cannot be eliminated, then this disaster will escalate again. All countries bordering the Black Wilderness need to use their own high-level professionals. The terrain where he is higher and he can see farther. At the end of his vision, he clearly saw that a large city of the human race had been razed to the ground. Such tragic casualties have not occurred for many years. The long silent abyss seems to be about to start a war again. The enemies lurking in the darkness are already ready to move. A feeling that a great era is about to come rushing towards him reaches the heart of the dwarf general. But before he could feel the sentiment, he saw a golden phoenix flying into the sky inside the Black Wilderness. Before, everyone was in despair and ready to die. It was the sudden appearance of this phoenix that gave them the confidence to resist. Seeing the phoenix flying into the sky again, the dwarf general excitedly raised his war hammer. The dwarf warriors behind him also raised their hands and shouted. In different places in the Black Wilderness, the surviving warriors all raised their arms and shouted. Outside the ruins of Stormwind City, Shuhi and Li Wei were also shouting excitedly. The same was true for Bex and Lanya. Although the old principal did not speak, his trembling hands were evidence of his excitement. Chen Yu is still alive, and it seems that his strength has become even stronger. But the next moment, the cheers of the people have not subsided. The dark curtain of the Lord of the Dark Star was lifted up, turning into a sharp arrow to completely blow the phoenix into a sky full of stars. No, I don't know how many people shouted in disbelief. The dwarf general's eyes were about to burst, and his eyes were red. Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal were stiff, and their expressions were frozen. But before one wave was over, another turn came. The exploding phoenix starlight lit up the dark sky, and then gathered together madly. The familiar voice sounded in everyone's ears again. Nirvana. A ball of golden flame rose from the sky. The flame rushed in all directions with the heat wave. The phoenix that had dissipated appeared in front of the world again. Phoenix Beast Soul Characteristics, Nirvana. After the explosion, it will be resurrected again, and all attributes will be temporarily increased by 50%, with a cooling period of 30 days. The Lord of the Dark Star felt the phoenix's strengthened attributes again, and his face was ashen. He resisted the joint attack of Bard and the other three, and killed Chen Yu at all costs. But he forgot another characteristic of the phoenix. Nirvana. After Nirvana, the phoenix not only fully recovered, but also entered a short-term state of comprehensive strengthening. Chen Yu rushed over again, and the blazing golden light rushed through the Dark Star Lord. The Dark Star Lord activated the void in time, but was still burned by the phoenix light and lost his life. His consciousness gradually blurred. His eyes began to dim. The Dark Star Lord knew that he had failed this time. But he didn't understand. Even if it was Nirvana strengthening, this phoenix was strengthened a bit too much. This must be a multiplier of strengthening. The phoenix flame gradually wrapped Chen Yu and restored to the phoenix form. He was so excited that he couldn't say more. Just because, when the phoenix exploded just now, he activated his talent at the same time. I didn't expect that soul sacrifice would actually sacrifice the phoenix. Explosion, sacrifice, resurrection. Chen Yu's attributes soared again. The phoenix never dies. In the New World, this old saying is the best description of the Phoenix clan. It is said that when the phoenix reaches the end of its lifespan or dies in a disaster, their true spirit will be activated, guided by the sacred fire, and reborn. The real situation is naturally not so strong. Chen Yu, who has obtained the Phoenix Beast Soul, knows it. There are two types of Phoenix resurrection. Phoenixes usually condense part of their life force in their heart core. When the body encounters inevitable destruction, they will abandon the body. Use it as fuel for the sacred fire and turn it into nutrients to supply the heart core. Resurrect in this way. Chen Yu's Phoenix Beast Soul characteristic, Nirvana, is actually the embodiment of this ability. The real Phoenix resurrection requires extremely harsh conditions. That is the real secret of the Phoenix clan, and only a few allies know the details. The phoenix that fell in the Black Wilderness that year, even with various arrangements, still failed to revive. The Queen of Elf told Chen Yu that it was a high-level phoenix of the 7th level. Of course, if it weren't for the trader's continuous extraction. Perhaps this phoenix could really be resurrected. But now everything is empty. Chen Yu, who regards the phoenix as the nutrients of the world tree, would never hand it over. Clang! A loud phoenix cry reached everyone's ears. Everyone could hear the joy and excitement in the phoenix cry. Everyone thought Chen Yu was happy to kill the clone of the Lord of Dark Star. But they didn't know that Chen Yu was excited about his own strength. Phoenix Nirvana characteristic, resurrection after death. The short-term death in this process was actually judged as a body explosion by the talent Soul Sacrifice. Soul Sacrifice successful, absorbing LV1 Phoenix Beast Soul. Chen Yu, Druid, level 5550. Individual attributes. 2047680-4095360. Agility 226,304,905,216. Physique 507000 right pointing arrow 1,014,000. Asterisk 382788-1,531,152. Will 89,896 right pointing arrow 404532. Incomplete sacrifice, unable to inherit characteristics. Individual basic attributes have more than doubled. Strength attribute is as high as 4 million, agility 900,000, physique 1 million, spirit 1.5 million, will 400,000. Single attribute has reached the attribute performance of the 4th level sublimation strongman. The average attribute has exceeded 1 million, far exceeding the 4 kings of Sha country. Even those strongmen who have sublimated to the 1st level in the New World have average attributes that are not as high as his. After the Phoenix form was revived, Chen Yu's strength also exploded again. Boom! Chen Yu completely recovered the Phoenix form. Chen Yu, Phoenix form. Strength, 6,143,040. Agility, 3,530,342. Physique, 1,519,321,000. Spirit, 9,033,797. Will, 2,589,005. Without counting the Nirvana amplification, the spiritual attribute is close to the 10 million mark. Nirvana amplification increases all attributes by 50%, and the spiritual attribute directly exceeds 10 million. Crushing the whole audience, the extraordinary spiritual attribute brings a heavy pressure to everyone present. Inside and outside the black wasteland, everyone's shoulders sank. At this moment, Chen Yu felt like an omnipotent formation. Any creature in any position of the entire black wasteland is under his control. As long as he has a thought, an idea, he can attack the opponent. And no creature can escape his detection, and all individual information is clear at a glance. Even the abyss channel that has disappeared has been found by him. The Lord of Dark Star, who was already conscious, stared at the sky. The Phoenix fire, which could only offset part of the abyss breath, now completely ignites him. The Lord of Dark Star knows that there is only one reason for this. That is, Chen Yu at this time, his attributes crushed him. But how is this possible? The Lord of Dark Star used up his last bit of strength to pass this information to his original body. But the Abyss channel has been closed for a long time, and the Abyss army behind the channel has long evacuated. And everything he has was burned to ashes under the Phoenix fire of breaking evil. The Phoenix fire will not let him leave any information. Chen Yu pressed the head of the Lord of Dark Star with his bird claws. The soul fluctuations passed into his mind. Although I'm excited to get the enhancement. But you really deserve to die. I haven't even had time to upgrade my Phoenix form. Chen Yu's voice was distressed. Most of his previous experience reserves were given to the Emperor Ape Beetle. After the remaining experience reserves were put into the Phoenix form, it was barely enough to upgrade to the next level. The Phoenix is the highest level species among the sacred beast souls. If Chen Yu uses his own understanding, it is a mythical species. Such a special beast soul also has a huge demand for experience. No wonder it is said that the druid profession costs resources. If Chen Yu didn't have the soul sacrifice talent, ordinary people would need a lot of time to grow even if they got the Phoenix beast soul. The first sacrifice, the attribute bonus of the Phoenix cannot be maximized. There is only one explosion of the complete form left, and then you can get the full harvest. As for upgrading the Phoenix, Chen Yu just thought it was difficult. After experiencing the extraordinary experience brought by the attribute breaking through 10 million, Chen Yu understood that this is a very important threshold. Perhaps it is one of the necessary conditions for the top strong. He could have easily achieved it, but now he is forced to postpone it. As for the fact that he has not even sublimated yet, it was automatically ignored. Thinking of this, Chen Yu felt that the Lord of the Dark Star was more and more hateful. This Abyss Commander has been included in his little book. When there is a chance to meet next time, he must be killed as soon as possible. Bard and the Red Dragon released the secret of fusion, and the man and the dragon looked at the sky in embarrassment and awe. Titan Grail even lay directly on the ground, without even the strength to get up. However, from his angle, he can still appreciate the grandeur of the sky. As for Duke Benna, the big griffin was completely lying down, and his own equipment was also riddled with holes. The Lord of the Dark Star is worthy of being the Abyss Commander. The strength recorded in the past was the 7th level of sublimation. After so many years, I am afraid that he has improved. With only a soul condensed incarnation, the strength is obviously not higher than theirs, but they beat them miserably. If it weren't for Chen Yu suddenly appeared, acting as a meat shield to attract hatred. It was hard to say what would happen to the three of them today. Maybe they would really be killed one by the Lord of Dark Star. The power of skills and the control of power were stronger than them. Not to mention that the Lord of Dark Star could also use the power of the core of his body. But it was all over now. Chen Yu used the Nirvana characteristics of the Phoenix to exchange for the death of the soul of the Lord of Dark Star. The Phoenix fire, which naturally restrained the abyss, left the Lord of Dark Star no room for resistance. What's going on with this amazing pressure? Bard muttered to himself. Grawl and Duke Benna, who were not far away, also looked serious. They were certainly not unfamiliar with this kind of pressure. Bard and Grawl faced the 3 stars of Tianxing, and Duke Benna faced the Imperial Marshal. But they were strong men who had been tempered and whose reputation spread throughout the world. Their levels were at least 6 sublimation turns. They felt that they had a single attribute that exceeded 10 million, which was a suppression for them. And the young man in front of them, the attribute is over 10 million. No matter how they think about it, the 3 of them think it is ridiculous. Especially Bard and Grar, the 2 still have a vivid impression of Chen Yu. Even if the druid gets the blessing of the Phoenix, there is no reason to strengthen to this extent instantly. A professional who has not yet sublimated has an attribute of over 10 million. If you tell others, the whole new world will be shaken tomorrow. That is no longer a potential rookie. He is a powerful person who can influence the decision-making of a country in the direction of a clan. The Lord of the Dark Star was completely burned to annihilation. Chen Yu released the Phoenix form. The invisible pressure finally disappeared. The abyss monsters in the entire black wilderness trembled, each looking for a crack in the ground to drill into it. Layers of halos emerged from Chen Yu's body. That is the experience reward for killing the Lord of the Dark Star. Because there is no task, it is just experience. But this huge amount of experience is also very terrifying. The soul of the Lord of the Dark Star is at the 3rd level of strength. He was like being thrown into the sea, with endless experience energy pouring into his body. Your reserve experience has reached the upper limit, and you need to upgrade before you can increase the reserve upper limit. Do you want to upgrade? Chen Yu ignored it and directly channeled the experience energy into the Phoenix Beast Soul. A huge amount of experience energy immediately poured out, madly filling the bottomless pit of the Phoenix Beast Soul. Phoenix Beast Soul has been upgraded, Ajda LV 2/10. Phoenix Beast Soul has been upgraded, LV 10 out of 10. Basic Blessing. Basic Attribute plus 10 per level. Attribute Blessing. Spirit, Agility plus 200%, Will plus 250%. Feature Nirvana. After the explosion, it will be resurrected again, and all attributes will be temporarily increased by 50%, with a cooling period of 10 days. Skills. Evil Breaking. Passive, has the effect of reducing and eliminating negative energy, with a minimum of 50%. Delusion Breaking. Passive, the attack carries 50% true damage. Life Fire. Will can be converted into vitality, enjoying the highest increase. 1 point of will is converted into 100 points of life. Holy Body. absorbs magic damage and converts it into will. After it is activated, it continuously consumes magic power, with a minimum absorption of 50%. Phoenix wings. The body turns into energy shock, continuously consumes magic power, and the damage is both magic and martial arts. The Phoenix at level 10 has changed a lot. The attribute blessing is increased by 100% each. The skill effect is also strengthened. The minimum effect of breaking evil is increased to 50%. In other words, any negative energy in the future will be weakened by half in front of Chen Yu, and kneel down and call him daddy. The real damage is also 50%. Unless it is an absolute defense ability, any heavy armor is ineffective in front of him. Even if it is a virtual ability, you have to take his real damage. The combination of life fire and holy body improves the conversion efficiency. The holy body absorbs up to 50%, and 1 point of life fire's will is converted into 100 lives. The effect of Phoenix's immortality is fully demonstrated on Chen Yu. He can already be called a mage enemy. And the characteristics of the Phoenix, the cooling time of Nirvana is reduced to 10 days. That is to say, if he uses the Phoenix form to commit suicide, he can do it once every 10 days. Looking at the enhancement of various information, Chen Yu was not very happy, but was so distressed that he could not breathe. Dark Star Lord. Even if he was cut into pieces, it would not be enough to appease his anger. If he absorbed this after level 10, he would become a saint on the spot. However, after the Phoenix form reaches level 10, there is still a lot of experience energy that cannot be absorbed. Chen Yu simply released the restrictions and raised his level as well. Soon he rushed from LV 50 to LV 99. You have been upgraded to level 99. Please complete the sublimation task and obtain the career transformation upgrade. The remaining experience cannot be stored and disappears automatically. From level 50 to level 99, he has tens of thousands of attribute points for each attribute. But for him now, tens of thousands of attribute points are not worth mentioning at all. What annoyed Chen Yu was that he couldn't completely absorb the experience energy gained from killing the Lord of the Dark Star. On the other side, Bard and the other two also fell into a state of enlightenment. People in the new world couldn't upgrade through intuitive experience energy like them. But after fighting with the strong, they would also have corresponding insights, thereby improving their strength. This is the way to upgrade in this world. Chen Yu didn't bother them, but walked towards somewhere silently. This operation deviated from the original track not long after they entered the Black Wilderness. Light up the lighthouse, kill monsters, enter the barrier, condense the beast soul, and fight the abyss. This has taken a week. He refined the beast soul in the barrier, which seemed fast, but it actually took 2 days. Later, he hid for more than a day. In Chen Yu's not-so-long professional career, this operation can be said to be quite important. After walking for a distance, Chen Yu finally found the figure of the Crane Girl. This high-level official of Tianxing was previously chosen by the Lord of the Dark Star as a target for killing chickens and monkeys. After being severely injured, his life or death is unknown. Chen Yu only saw the whereabouts of the opponent during the battle. If left alone, the injury would probably become more serious. There is a translucent shield around the Crane Girl, which is the protection of the portable props. As a high-level member of Tianxing, the Crane Girl still has a lot of good things on her. It's just that her luck is a bit bad. As an auxiliary, she was the first to be targeted. Chen Yu punched the protective shield to pieces and directly resisted the opponent. The protective shield without conscious control can't stop his current attack at all. He took out a bunch of healing potions from his body and poured them into the Crane Girl. Chen Yu has the Phoenix form, and the healing potion is no longer effective for him. Regarding the Tianxing organization, he has a plan in his mind. If this is handled well, perhaps Xiaoguo will have a chance to truly intervene in the new world. Xiaoguo will no longer be guarded as a foreign world force as before. And to achieve this effect, it depends on his next operation. After this battle with the Lord of the Dark Star, Chen Yu believed that he should have been recognized. At least Bard and the others would not be wary of him. When Chen Yu returned to the original place, he was surprised to find that the old principal and others were already waiting there. There were still many remaining soldiers of various races in the distance, and they all cast their eyes over. Chen Yu, Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal rushed to Chen Yu. After carefully checking Chen Yu's body, they found that he was really alive and well without any injuries. Phoenix Nirvana not only brought back his vitality, but also restored his injuries. Otherwise, Chen Yu would have been like Grawl, lying there groaning. After confirming that they were all fine, everyone was even happier. It turned out that not only Chen Yu gained experience energy, but Shuhi and Li Wei also gained experience. Although they did not participate in the battle, both of them were within the effect range of the Team Stone. Even if they only shared 1% of the experience energy, they would have raised each of them by many levels. Li Wei went directly from LV60 to LV83. Shuhi went from LV62 to LV84. They jumped dozens of levels at once, saving the two of them a lot of training time. This was really a pleasant surprise. The only regret was that the old principal did not get a share of the profits. In order to test him, the old principal cancelled the team mode with them. But looking at the three young people's joyful appearance, the old principal did not feel unwilling at all. On the contrary, he smiled from ear to ear, and his eyes showed only excitement. These three will be good seedlings of Yuanguo. Those who will carry the banner of Xiaoguo in the future. No matter how many rewards they get, it is not enough in his opinion. At this time, the dwarf general walked nearby and asked in a muffled voice. "Young man, do you know where the phoenix that killed the Lord of the Dark Star went?" As soon as this was said, everyone around looked over. When they arrived here, Bard and the other two were still in the state of perception. No one dared to disturb them. Chen Yu came back with he knew, and it seems that he is the only person who knows the truth. The phoenix that disappeared for a long time in the present world reappeared in the world. The impact of this incident on people is no less than the restarting of the war by the Abyss army in the Black Wasteland. If the phoenix rejoins the front line against the Abyss, then the suppression of the Abyss in the New World may be improved. This is not just about a disappeared race. This is a major event concerning the fate of all races. The dwarf general looked up at Chen Yu. Before Chen Yu spoke, he heard Bard's voice from behind. "The phoenix you are talking about is just the transformation of this young druid. This disaster can only be solved by this young man. If he hadn't taken action, all of us would have died here today." The dwarf general widened his eyes, and the other human and dwarf warriors also looked incredible. Bex and Lanya, who followed, were also shocked. When Chen Yu came out of the barrier, he once issued a declaration. The voice fell on the soul level of everyone. At that time, they guessed that the one who turned into a phoenix was Shuhi's friend, the druid Chen Yu. But they still didn't dare to be sure, because it was too incredible. Until the top leader of their own organization, Lord Bard, spoke personally. Lanya reached out to cover her mouth, and looked at Chen Yu with awe. Bex even reached out to touch his chest and saluted Chen Yu. Compared to these two people, the dwarf general and others have not yet accepted this fact. The dwarf general excitedly stepped forward and stood beside Chen Yu. Under close observation, he could clearly feel the powerful attribute contained in Yu's body oppressed him. He looked like a young man, but he felt like he was facing a royal family. In their tribe, only those who have reached the third level of strength can obtain the title of king. Otherwise, even if you are the descendant of the title of king, you cannot ascend to the throne. Although the human race is improving very quickly, the one in front of him is too outrageous, right? He can be sure that Chen Yu's real age will never exceed 30 years old. Because the fluctuations of the soul are full of vitality, like the beginning of the old. At the age of 30, he has the strength of a king, which is a figure only in the mythological era. Moreover, this person is actually a druid. Druids can indeed change their forms through beast souls. But where does the phoenix beast soul come from? The dwarf general only felt that Chen Yu in front of him became unfathomable. With talent, strength, and phoenix beast soul, he looks like he was cultivated by a big force. And it has to be the kind of big force that can attend the Holy Council. Chen Yu turned and looked at Bard. The Dragon Knight had finished his perception and walked slowly to his side. "Take the crane girl from Chen." After receiving it from Yu, Bard took out a crystal bottle of potion and gave it to the other party to drink. As the abundant life energy emerged, the crane girl groaned and slowly woke up. The Tianxing senior who came from afar to support the legion tensed up the moment she opened her eyes. It was not until she discovered the breath of Bard and others that she relaxed. Since Bard was able to wake her up and was calm, it proved that she was out of danger. Either they escaped from the Black Wilderness and went to a safe area, or the terrifying abyss strongman in the Black Wilderness has been solved. How is the situation all resolved? The details will be discussed later. Bard used bandages and other treatment items to start a simple bandage for the Crane girl. At this time, Duke Benna came to Chen Yu with an admiring expression. He first looked at the dwarf general and explained it for him on behalf of Bard. The one who transformed into a phoenix to resist the fierce attack of the Lord of Darkstar, and finally killed the Lord of Darkstar in Nirvana, was indeed Chen Yu. I am Duke Benna of the Kylan Empire. You can absolutely believe what I say, we are not exaggerating at all. Duke of Kylan, I naturally believe what you say, I am just too shocked. Duke Benna pointed to the family emblem engraved on his armor, indicating that he was not lying. The dwarf general was naturally familiar with the Kylan Empire. The two countries lived side by side and had exchanges with each other. It was just an empire, after all, it was just a self-proclaimed name by the human race. For the major ancient races in the New World, the only ones that could truly bear the name of empire were the 5 empires of the past. The human empire, which was one of the 5 empires, has now fallen apart. Kylan was just a part of that empire. So when foreigners call human countries, they will not call them empires. But this does not prevent the dwarves from believing Duke Benna's words. He knew that the reason why Duke Benna emphasized this point was because he wanted to protect Chen Yu. Chen Yu is an alien. After approaching Chen Yu, the dwarf general soon discovered this. With the help of the dwarf technique, the dwarf general discovered some differences in Chen Yu's soul fluctuations. That proved that Chen Yu's soul came from another world. And the reputation of aliens in the New World is mixed, and generally much worse. If Duke Benna does not stand up, then Chen Shui's achievements may be deliberately erased. This is something they cannot accept after fighting together. It is no exaggeration to say that their lives were saved by Chen Yu. Duke Benna looked at Chen Yu and solemnly performed a ceremony to him. Mr. Chen Yu, the Benna family will always be your ally. For your glory and achievements, we will defend it for you. Chen Yu heard the sincerity in Duke Benna's words and knew in his heart that the other party was telling the truth. He looked at the old principal and Shuhi on the side and immediately told the plan in his mind. Duke Benna, I have a proposal. Chen Yu said slowly. He proposed cooperation with Duke Benna and the Tianxing organization. He wanted Sha to station a legion in the Black Wilderness and establish a base. Duke Benna and the Tianxing organization needed to help him persuade the Kylan Empire and surrounding forces. As a price, the Sha Legion would take on the task of clearing the Black Wilderness. Now the Abyss Legion behind the Black Wilderness has already evacuated. But before leaving, the Lord of the Dark Star summoned a large number of Abyss monsters. These monsters took advantage of the environment of the Black Wilderness and were ready to attack the surrounding forces. Now because of the deterrence of Chen Yu's phoenix form, they hid underground. But when time passes, the Abyss monsters will definitely not continue to shrink, they will attack. At that time, all countries will face an Abyss outpost without a large defense formation. The entry of Sha will help all countries gain time to form a legion. It can even help some forces take on the role of a resistance line. The more Shu He, the old principal, and Li Wei listened, the brighter their eyes became. Their previous attention was on Chen Yu and their own strength improvement. But they didn't expect that Chen Yu's eyes had already been set on a higher level. Among the 3, Chen Yu admired Shu He the most. She trained in the New World, joined the Tianxing organization, and worked hard everywhere. In order to help Sha Guo gain recognition from the forces here. She spent most of her time in the New World, and even her personal strength stagnated a little. But Chen Yu came to the New World for the first time. They have already begun planning for the national level to settle here. If the Sha Guo army is really stationed here, then a city must be built here. A city belonging to Sha Guo. When the monsters in the Black Wilderness were rampant, this city existed. So what happens when the Black Wilderness is finally cleaned up? Shu He couldn't help but look in the direction of Storm City. Storm City itself is a border city belonging to the Kylan Empire. Its original purpose was to resist the Black Wilderness. Now that Storm City has sunk, the best place for Xiaoguo to build a city is that area. With Xiaoguo's strong infrastructure capabilities, the broken earth is not a problem at all. Since the appearance of the Red Moon and the awakening of professions, Xiaoguo has consciously guided the concept of professional equality. It is precisely because of Xiaoguo's practice that Xiaoguo has obtained a large number of excellent life professionals. Among them, there are many people who are good at infrastructure work. Building a city. 1 month is enough. Duke Benna and Bard and Crane Girl in the back were surprised. Bard's eyes lit up, and he was quite interested in Chen Yu's plan. At this time, if there is a new force guarding here, it can indeed provide a buffer world for the forces adjacent to the Black Wilderness. And Duke Benna and even the dwarf general stared at Chen Yu. The two found that when Chen Yu said this, his eyes were calm and his tone was sincere. He directly pointed out that he wanted to open up a new situation for Xiaoguo in this world. Let Xiaoguo officially start to contact various forces in this world. This is an open card. Recalling the declaration when Chen Yu appeared, this young man had planned it from the beginning. Duke Benna is not only a practitioner, he is also a duke, who knows the political influence. After thinking about it, Duke Benna felt that Chen Yu's proposal was indeed impeccable. At this time, Chen Yu's prestige was high and his strength was incredibly strong. In addition, the Black Wilderness lost the Black Tower formation and lost the ability to automatically block the Abyss monsters. In the next period of time, the Black Wilderness will become a bomb for all countries. No matter which country or force, they will have to work hard for this. Chen Yu saw that Duke Benna was already somewhat moved, until he won the Duke. He decided to add fuel to the fire. Chen Yu stretched out his hand, and a mysterious divine pattern appeared on his hand. I am now a member of the Elf Royal Court. I will invite the Elf Royal Court to be a witness to Shah's entry. Shah adheres to neutrality and will never actively invade the territories of the New World. The divine pattern on the back of Chen Yu's hand no longer has the spiritual attachment of the Queen. But this is indeed the identity certificate given to him by the Queen. As the energy flows, the breath of the 1,000 elves comes out. And Chen Yu himself also has a title, Elf Hope. Even if the forces of the New World use secret methods to detect him, they will get the same result. The appearance of the elf divine pattern is like the last weight falling from the scale. 0. Duke Benna saluted again solemnly. Mr. Chen Yu, your proposal makes me very excited. But I need to report this to the Emperor. Quote, Chen Yu said he understood, and at the same time hoped that Kylan, as the host, would invite all the relevant forces around to participate in the meeting. As one of the more powerful forces in the human race, the Kylan Empire has enough prestige. As for the contact person of Xiaoguo, the elders will naturally suppress the bandits at that time. As for now, before the results come out, there must be no one to defend here. As Shu He said, Stormwind City has been destroyed, so there must be a replacement line of defense. I will let Xiaoguo send a legion here to establish a line of defense first. Quote, if it was a proposal before, then Chen Yu is now reporting. He has already shown his elf identity, and with the prestige of killing the Lord of the Dark Star, no one here can oppose him. Bard and other Tianqing members also approved Chen Yu's arrangement. Anyway, Chen Yu said that it was just a preliminary measure. If all countries can send defensive forces as soon as possible, the Xiaoguo Legion can also withdraw. Duke Benna pondered for a while and nodded to approve Chen Yu's arrangement. As a duke, although Stormwind City does not belong to his territory. But Stormwind City does not belong to any duke or prince. He is the highest noble here, and his words are law. Several bigwigs approved the plan and took action immediately. Allowing Xiaoguo to settle here is too big a matter. In addition to the current situation of the Black Wilderness, Duke Benna needs to go back and report to the Emperor. On the Tianqing organization side, Bard, Greyer and others also need to return to discuss with the three leaders. But Tianqing is much simpler than Kylan. Bard has recognized the friendship with Chen Chen on behalf of Tianqing. At the same time, he also recognized the friendship of Xiaoguo. In other words, Tianqing will be Xiaoguo's first ally in the New World. If Xiaoguo really obtains the right to build a city, then as long as Xiaoguo does not invade other countries, Tianqing will stop all attacks on Xiaoguo. This is also an act of maintaining order. In this way, the problem of Xiaoguo's lack of top combat power is also solved. Even Bex and Lanya are descendants of big forces. These two people who were convinced by Chen Yu and Shu He said that they would let their families contact Xiaoguo after returning. If Xiaoguo cannot station here, then they may have a chance if they try hard. Watching these scenes, the old principal was so excited that tears fell. It is true that one punch can open up 100 punches. The efforts of many people in Xiaoguo over the past year are not as much as the situation opened up directly by Chen Yu in this battle. The first of the dragon and the phoenix. No, this time when he returns, perhaps Chen Shui's identity will change directly. He will be the well-deserved first of Xiaoguo. The explosive battle power before, even if there were many four kings here, they would not die anymore. After Chen Yu turned into a phoenix, the terrifying pressure was felt clearly even if he was so far away. When did the four heavenly kings ever give him this feeling? If he hadn't been following Chen Yu, the old principal would have thought that he had slept for 10 years. Chen Yu, Shu He, Li Wei, and the old principal returned to the real world as soon as possible. The forces gathered in the Black Wilderness also quickly dispersed. The forces that participated in this battle suffered heavy casualties, and there were abyss monsters in the Black Wilderness ready to move. With the sudden appearance of Chen Yu and other intelligence, there were too many things. And the war reports about the Black Wilderness began to be passed from small to large. The Abyss Legion behind the Black Wilderness moved away, perhaps a terrible conspiracy was taking shape. The terrifying commander of the Abyss Legion, the Lord of the Dark Star, appeared and descended into the wilderness. The alien druid obtained the opportunity of the Phoenix and killed the soul of the Lord of the Dark Star. The alien forces settled in the new world. One by one, each one had a very eye-catching effect. All the people or forces who received the war reports could not sit still and took action. Elf Royal Court. The Elf Queen convened a high-level meeting again. The Archdruid was still in the ancestral land of the Wind Elves, so he was absent. The Fire and Gold Elves were on their way back and were also absent. In addition, all the high-level officials of the Elf Royal Court gathered together to look at their queen. Not long ago, the queen burst out a terrible breath in the sacrificial garden, alarming the entire royal court. Many elves have been guessing what happened. But everyone is also cheering for the queen's strength. In the White Palace, the emperor sat on the throne. Without the gentleness and calmness in front of Chen Yu, he looked very majestic. Everyone who was swept by the queen's eyes straightened up involuntarily. Even the high priest who had warned the queen before was the same. My dear ministers, I summoned you here to announce something. Quote, Druid Chen Yu has been recognized by me and has joined the Elf Royal Court as one of our first tiers. The queen's voice was cold and penetrating, and it reached the ears of all the elves. The high priest raised his head in astonishment and looked at Queen Shi in confusion. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.